from 10 Barrel Brewing. They let us out of the cage for today. We are at 10 Barrel in
for a little
the
while.
Pearl. Yeah, we get 3 hours here. I've got to start this bad boy off. Come down to 10 Barrel. We're right here in the Pearl. I'm looking right now at Flanders. What is this? 11th and Flanders? Is that what that is? Is that what street that is right out there? 12th and Flanders?
12th Flanders. 14th.
14th and Flanders. Gosh, I was Swanson, Samson.
Yeah,
I was
that's it.
way off.
We'll find it.
But we are 14th and Flanders. Come down. It is 10 Barrel Brewing. It is our NBA draft extravaganza at 10 Barrel. The roof is open. The sign is up. Come on down. We have from noon right now all the way till 7 p.m. We are live at 10 Barrel giving you all things NBA draft. And I have to tell the people out there, I have never seen Danny so quiet in my entire life. You usually barrel in and you don't stop talking until you walk out the door.
Yeah.
You have been eerily quiet all day long. You've been locked into your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Your phone keeps on buzzing over there.
Yep.
I now feel like a parent with two teenagers where you're at the dinner table and you're like, hey, can I get some eye contact from you? You're locked and loaded, buddy.
I flip my phone over while we're on air, so I don't look at it too much, but I'm also like eerily like, do I need to flip it over? I need to flip it over?
I need that Woj breaking news, though. You need to pull the Schefter if anything pops up, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've got it on my watch as well because I'm a lunatic. But yeah, no, I went to bed about 2 o'clock in the morning, got up at 6, and it's been busy. I've heard multiple things that we could get weird in the next hour or so. So there's always things that get close that never actually come to fruition. But more than a few people are saying that it might hit the fan here in a little bit.
Ooh. We talking big
time moves in the
trades,
NBA.
big moves, player movement that we're talking about here because, look, this is going to be 2 days in a row we start very sportsy, but worth it. Worth it right now. Last night we saw obviously the first major domino to fall, and this is truly a blockbuster where you have the Nova Knicks now fully united. Jay Wright is about to go and kick Tibbs right out the door of MSG and take over coaching that team because essentially every starter from that 2016 Villanova national championship team is on the New York Knicks now.
Yeah, no, I've never seen anything like it in professional sports where so many players from the team have, like, we've seen like a couple guys from Georgia end up at the Eagles. We're like, whoa, crazy. Now they've got, 4 guys from a national title team. You're going 4 of, like, really 12, not 15, but I mean 4 of 15 is a big deal. And I mean, outside of, some weirdness, you're going to start at least 3 of them.
Look, we can pull the layers of this onion back over the course of this show because there's a lot of angles that you can take from it. But what ended up happening, if you missed it, the New York Knicks acquire Mikal Bridges from the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for Bojan Bogdanovic, 4 unprotected first-round picks, a top 10 protected Bucks pick, a pick swap, a first-round pick swap, and a second-round pick. That is a massive haul for 2 teams that not just share a city in New York City. They haven't done a deal together since 1983. First trade between the Knicks and the Nets since 1983.
Yeah, crosstown rivals don't like doing that.
And it goes for 4 unprotected first-round picks, a pick swap, and a second-round pick. But Mikal Bridges, they're just trying to collect all of the wings in Madison Square Garden.
Well, not only that, they're trying to collect all the Villanova players like an Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah.
That's really where they're at this point. I've never seen somebody flirt in public like this with a potential teammate so many times as the Knicks have, and actually have it come to fruition. Because there's always plenty of talk. We know that we have the banana boat and the how everything came together in Miami. Certain guys were left off the banana boat as well, Melo and Chris Paul and stuff. But it's going to be really interesting to see how it works out. Do you want to dive into the particulars now?
Yeah.
Okay.
No better time to do it than now.
Well, I've seen some people call the Knicks, oh my God, they overpaid. I think you need to take a step back and treat this like the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George trades to the Clippers, where, yes, they gave up a ton for Paul George, but that also got them Kawhi Leonard. And in this vein, they gave up peanuts for OG Anunoby, and they overpaid for Mikal Bridges. So, but if you look at them, and if they're able to keep OG...
And that's the other thing, too, is that they do plan to keep OG Anunoby. They're offering about $26 million. OG in his camp, they want around $30 million.
And then some. 35, 36 is where they're probably going to have to end up.
And it's odd. It's almost the exact same numbers as the Brandon Ayuk deal. Isn't that weird?
It's a little weird. Because typically the NBA is going to have a little bit more.
That's weird.
Right?
All right.
But if you take a look at the totality of the trades for OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, if I told you could get OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks by giving up Emmanuel Quickley, R.J. Barrett, and 4 unprotected firsts plus the Bucks pick. 5 total picks. Would you do it?
Yes. Yes. I think if I look at the way that New York is pushing all in right now, though, they are saying that, look, we know our window is going to be small, but to win a championship, it will all be worth it. And if I'm a New York Knicks fan, you love that. You are mortgaging the future. You see that there is potential and hope right there with this roster in the way that they have kind of assembled all of the other Villanova guys and kind of brought everybody together. But at the same time, you know, we do have fans that get so caught up of, future draft picks. Look at what the Nets have done, though. The Nets gave up all of their future draft picks, and then when they are hitting the hardest of hard resets, they are going to be bottom feeders in the NBA next year, and it is going to be by design. They're getting all of those picks back because they end up doing an ancillary trade with the Houston Rockets last night where they got their first-round pick back. And so you're looking at everything kind of coming together full circle.
Yeah, it's a full hard reset for the Nets, and after dancing back and forth, Sean Marks won the battle with Joe Tsai and basically told him, shut up, let me run the team. And that's really what needed to happen, because that middle ground of like, well, we don't have our picks, so we can't really tank, was such a dumb thing. And the Bridges trade, I was told, was predicated on getting the picks back from Houston.
Yeah.
The deal was not going to materialize without getting those picks back.
It would have been insanity to make that deal without having the framework and a handshake agreement with Houston before that.
And what they did, and I think they did the right thing here, they basically cashed in their Suns picks for their own picks and then traded their own picks for Knicks picks. If that makes sense. So they've cashed in the capital. What's interesting about this now...
I feel like Alan from The Hangover playing cards.
Well, you think about this in the sense of the leverage that the Rockets had here in having the Nets picks. Now the Rockets have the leverage in having the Suns picks.
And that is a whole other situation where the Suns are going to want their picks back.
If things go sideways, and there's been... We talked about this, I want to say 6 weeks ago. I heard that there was some rumblings around Kevin Durant in Phoenix. Now, they're denying that he's on the block or that he's available. I've heard from multiple people that the Suns and Kevin Durant are at odds. However, there's not an immediacy or a push to move him, and if they do move him, it will be out of nowhere, and it will just materialize much like the Mikal Bridges trade. Now, I don't think the Suns know how to operate like that, but we'll see how that comes out. But here's what you need to know as far as the Knicks and Nets are concerned, then we can move into Houston. The Knicks have basically gone all in. They do have a little bit more capital to spend, and they need to find a home for Julius Randle. That's a real thing. Isaiah Hartenstein is gone. He's not going to return to the Knicks. He is going to be a very, very sought-after, high-level role player on the market.
Tough. That's tough for them, though. That's tough, and especially if you move off Julius Randle, which they didn't make this run in the playoffs this year without Julius Randle, and at the end of the season, obviously, because he had a shoulder injury. But at the same time, now you're at a crossroads where you are missing now front court because you have got all the wings in the world. Your backcourt is definitely set. Are you going to be relying on 6'4" Josh Hart to be your leading rebounder throughout now?
Yeah, no, I don't think you can do that. And even as crazy as Tibbs is, I don't think that's a reality that can exist. So it's going to be interesting to see how that part of it all plays out. I was talking to a bunch of people around the league last night, and we all played the where does Randall go? Like, and finding that team right now is increasingly difficult. I don't know where Randall goes right now, and that's I think going to be the surprise for me is where he ends up. But as far as the Knicks are concerned right now, they've got their Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby 1, 2, 3, absolute monster, and then you mix in. If they for whatever reason they'd keep Randall, which I don't think is going to happen, Randall at the 4, then they figure out do they keep Mitchell Robinson now at the 5, and they've got DiVincenzo coming off the bench.
Now here's another question as it relates to Julius Randle, who his salary is higher than Jeremy Grant's. We've heard Jeremy Grant's name kind of bandied about in a lot of different places, and we will talk about that as the show goes on because. The Lakers have now popped into the chat, and this is more of teams just checking in, along with Dallas, which we talked about. They're kicking the tires and they're checking in on Jeremy Grant. But when you have another 4 that's on the market, does that suppress the value that the Blazers could potentially get in a return for a guy like Jeremy Grant?
Stylistically, I think there's going to be some differences there that's going to change things around. Also, the value of Jeremy's contract and the fact that he hasn't had to have 2 pretty radical surgeries. Jeremy's been despite him being set down to close seasons, he's been relatively healthy. So he's never really had to deal with anything serious. But the Nets, however, now have a full reset table. They have a 2-year window with which to tank. That's what they have. They have their own picks for 2025 to 2026. There's a swap in 2027, which gets a little dicey. But they're going to go face first into the ground.
They have 4 first-round picks in the 2025 draft now.
So, and they're including their own, where they are going to look. That's the other part of this we haven't talked about. From what I understand, it is a fire sale.
Oh yeah,
everything must go.
They are cratering into the side of the mountain.
Cam Johnson is going to be available. Dorian Finney-Smith is going to be available. Ben Simmons is available, but I think that's only as a way for a team to maybe reset their team financially. That's the something that's there. It's going to be interesting to see just exactly how much. That's the thing is, like, I don't think a Julius Randle could suppress the market, but I wonder how much the availability of a bunch of Nets wings could all of a sudden not only not suppress the market, but get the market going. Because now it was like, there's all these guys are available. Let's start wheeling and dealing.
And that's why this was the very first domino to fall on heading into this draft. It was, we're not going to see a whole lot of activity of teams wanting to move up and move up in this draft, but because of the new CBA, because of what the 2025 draft holds, and the fact that teams are going to want to tank and make sure that they are positioning themselves in a place to get a lottery pick, get a top 5 pick next year, we could see fire sales from rosters, teams trying to manipulate to get under the second apron, or find that final piece to open up that championship window wide open for them. And the action is just starting. We are less than 5 hours away from the NBA draft. We're down here at 10 Barrel Brewing in the Pearl, 14th and Flanders. Come on down. We already got people showing up. The rooftop bar is open. You got, what is that? The Euros are on one TV. We got draft coverage on the other.
Yeah, we got Turkey, Czech Republic going over there.
Who doesn't love a good Turkey versus Czech Republic game on the TV? But
great jersey matchup.
The draft is here, and we are just hours away. Rumors are swirling. How do these pertain to the hometown team, though? The Portland Trail Blazers hold the 7th and 14th picks in the draft. We just got done talking about the first domino to fall was the Mikal Bridges trade, going from Brooklyn to New York. Well, that's a weird statement to say. Going from the Nets to the Knicks, because Brooklyn is in New York.
From New York to New York.
What is the buzz around the Blazers this draft and what it's looking like at 7? Let's start diving into it. This is Danny and Dusty on The Fan.
What's your opinion?
Heavy traffic from Allen Boulevard to the Pacific. fight experience. You can rely on soft.
The IRS, tax relief advocate. Get in the zone.
All right, the Portland Trail Blazers hold the 7th and 14th picks in this draft. And coming up today, we will be joined at 1 o'clock. Corey Tulaba from No Ceilings. He will join us at 1. Casey Holdall, the Portland Trail Blazers. He's going to hop on with us at 2 o'clock. We're going to bust down the door of the Blazers War Room.
Nah, we'll get Casey on the phone, and then him and I will matriculate on down to the practice facility tonight for the media availability. It's going to be a busy, busy day.
Let's go. All right, let's talk about the hometown team and what we're looking at from the Portland Trail Blazers holding that number 7 draft. Boy, there is a lot of information swirling. Guys are rising up draft boards. We're seeing teams rumored to be making moves. And, look, this all, it points at a lot of gray area for Portland at 7, because we've seen Donovan Clingan as high as 1. We have seen him as low as 7 to Portland. You're now seeing teams wanting to move up and jump over Portland. What are we looking at with 7, and what it just kind of where we're at less than 5 hours away from draft?
As of right now, it's as clear as mud.
There we go.
That's where we're at. So Donovan Clingan is proving to be quite the spark point. It does sound like Zachary Rieseshay is going to go number 1 overall to Atlanta. There's still some noise around potentially San Antonio moving up, but I think if they're going to move one of their picks at this point, it sounds like it's going to be number 8. They've been linked with that pick and Keldon Johnson in various trade scenarios around the league, so we'll see how that pans out. But as of right now, I feel as comfortable as I will feel in this draft, with Rieseshay going 1, Sarr going 2. After that, it's a basket of cats. There has been real smoke about Memphis moving up to number 3 to take Donovan Clingan. If they move up to 3, that's what they're going for.
And if Reed Shepard is the guy that Houston covets, they could probably still get him at 8 if they swap back.
9. Memphis at 9. San Antonio's at 8. But the interesting thing is, that's the thing is that if what happens at 3 is going to, we've talked about spark points in this draft. That is going to be the spark point. Originally, I had it as 3 and 5 because
with
those.
Detroit.
and that's the thing is, right now, if Clingan isn't taken at 3 and the Rockets take Reed Shepard and they can't move 3 for whatever reason, I've been told by multiple sources that Detroit is considering Clingan just for the hell of it because they have Trajan Langdon and it's the best player on their board.
Just bigs on bigs on bigs.
And then they'll figure out what to do with Duren and Isaiah Stewart and then kind of go from there. Or they could basically hold him hostage and trade him. And that's another opportunity. That's not another. A first opportunity for Trajan Langdon to make his kind of spark point in this draft. That would push, obviously, Modest Buzelis further down in the draft. And if he doesn't get picked there's a chance that he could slide to 10, 11, 12, which would be a big drop for him. If Klingen's gone and you get to 6 and Charlotte's sitting there and Reed Shepherd is on the board, they've been wanting to move up, or rumored to move up for Reed for quite some time. The 3 players that I have heard the Charlotte Hornets most interested in are Reed Shepherd, Stephen Castle, and Donovan Klingen. As of right now, if the Spurs stay at 4, I think they're going to take Castle.
And that is the guy who makes the most sense stylistically. And, I mean, look at him between the ears. Mm-hmm. He's a pop guard through and through.
Yes, and I know some decision makers that have him number 1 on their board overall. Mm-hmm. So it's a very Spursian pick. It's very much, I think, a lesser leveraged Kawhi Leonard at that point, where you're hoping that something else takes another level, takes another step, an opportunity there to kind of figure some stuff out. Then you get to Charlotte and the decision they make. Cody Williams is high on their board. I've been told from multiple people that the Charlotte Hornets are considering Cody Williams, and that's kind of like where that position goes. So if Cody Williams is off the board, Donovan Klingen's off the board, what do the Blazers do at 7?
Tajon Salam?
I think that's probably the most likely course of action.
But with the way that you just laid it out, that would also leave Modest Buzelis on the board, which has not been linked to Portland at all.
There's been a couple people here or there, but that's about it. It's just not something that's been out there. I heard his workout was okay. I know he has supporters not only around the league, but I know that there's certain people within the Blazers organization that think, hey, if the shot's real, he's 6'10", he can put the ball on the floor, there's some stuff there. And if you're talking about upside, if you believe in the shooting, that's an opportunity. Personally, if the board were to fall this way, I would go with Salon. That would be the pick that I would make. However, there's a chance that Cody Williams is there, and I think Cody Williams is probably the guy that they're most looking at right now if Klingen is going to go early. What's interesting is what the hell happens after Portland, because as messy as it looks 1 through 6, it does it all over again 8 through 13.
Yeah.
If the Grizzlies move up and now the Rockets move back, who are they taking at 9? Or are they completely out? Or do they move 9 for something else? That's you just don't know what's going to happen there. Do they? Because 9 is, I've been told, is the floor for Ron Holland. That's as early as he's going to go.
Wait, you mean the ceiling for him?
Well,
the earliest that he'll go?
Yeah, so floor.
Okay.
So
yeah.
The earliest that he will go, and that's Memphis. If all of a sudden it's the Rockets picking there, are they going to add another young wing to that team?
Yeah.
That's insane. There's just no room for it. Okay. So the Spurs, if they trade out of 8, who's moving into 8? What happens there? And now if you've got the Rockets trading back to 9, and that's before you get to 10, and Danny Ainge in Utah, and you're going, the 8 and 9, coin tosses. I don't know which way they're going to go. I think if the board falls out with this group of players, I think you're probably looking at Utah looking at Nikola Topic, and I think that's eventually how you're going to get your top 10. Now, where they go, God only knows in what order, outside of Reza Shea and Sarr. But I think there's an opportunity that Reed Shepherd could fall. There's an opportunity that Donovan Klingen could fall. There's an opportunity that Modest Buzelis could fall. There's an opportunity across the board for a number of players. And I don't mean fall out of the top 10, but fall out of projected spots or teams switching spots to pick up guys that they want, and then an opportunity comes for somebody else.
The most unsure draft in quite some time is getting more uncertain by the hour as we approach draft, which will start at 5 o'clock. Our coverage on sister station ESPN Portland 910 starts at 4 o'clock for the NBA draft. Isaac and Suk are going to be here right after us at 10 Barrel Brewing in the Pearl. It's a 14th and Flanders. We already got Blazer fans filing in. They're already having some sodies right now. The rooftop bar is open, so come on down, hang out with us. The NBA draft party at 10 Barrel Brewing. We'll be here till 7 o'clock tonight, getting all things Portland Trail Blazers leading up to the draft. All right. One thing that you said, we went over this yesterday, and this is one thing that I would love to hear from Blazer fans, whether you're on the YouTube stream or on the Vancouver Ford text line at 503-864-6326. With what we just went through, this uncertainty, and the fact that now the door is opening, all right, at 7, for guys like Mattis Buzelis. We Reed Shepard, right? If he's doesn't seem like a guy that Portland would take, but if he's there and you have that much faith in him,
if you're looking, he's your best player. Let's say he's second on the Blazers board, and all of a sudden he's there at 7. You're like, well,
this is where you're going biggest upside, biggest swing, best player available. All right, what does this open up Portland for right now? 503-864-6326. Right now, you got Jeff Rust, and he's got SportsCenter.
Now, from the Fan Sports Desk, a SportsCenter update on 1080 The Fan.
This update brought to you by 808 Hawaiian Restaurant. Your favorite spot for Island Grinds now has 3 locations: Woodstock, Burnside, new in Beaverton, and always online at ate-oh-ate.com. First on the Fan, the NBA draft is finally here. The Trailblazers hold picks number 17 and 14 in the first round and 34 and 40 in the second round. Still no indication of their plans, as there is also still much uncertainty in the picks that precede them. Danny and Dusty, primetime with Isaac and Suk, live from 10 Barrel Pub all day in the Pearl from now until 7 o'clock. ESPN radio coverage of the draft will start at 4 o'clock on 910 ESPN Portland. Shams Charania of The Athletic reporting the Heat and center Bam Adebayo intend to sign a 3-year, $166 million max extension through the 2028-29 season. And a blockbuster trade last night in the association. The Nets sending Mikal Bridges and a second-round pick to the Knicks in exchange for Bojan Bogdanovic. 5 first-round picks, 4 of those are unprotected, and an unprotected pick swap. The Mariners looking to avoid the sweep in Tampa Bay. They took a 5-1 lead over the Rays into the bottom of the 9th, only to load the bases with nobody out, but Tampa only got 1 run out of that. 5-2 is your final. Cal Raleigh with a 3-run home run. George Kirby gets the win. 6 innings, 1 run, and no walks with 7 Ks. Elsewhere in the Bigs, the Astros leading the Rockies are in the bottom of the 6th in Houston. That's a 2-0 lead. And the Rangers and Brewers now knotted up at 5 apiece, bottom of the 5th in Milwaukee. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust at the Fan Sports Desk. Listen live or on demand on the Odyssey app, the Fan's desktop player, or tell your smart speaker to play 1080 The Fan.
Join the Fan for our 2024 draft party at 10 Barrel Portland Pub on Northwest Flanders. Today, starting at noon, have a draft with 1080 The Fan.
Portland's only on the water boat show is
That's advancedhair.com.
Sorry, but we actually have a wait list for our Monstera.
Show us.
$1 term life insurance policy.
Gotta be at least 150.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and
100% online process.
Dusty live from 10 Barrel Brewing in the Pearl, 14th and Flanders. Come down, party with us, party people. The YouTube party animals are still alive and well, popping off in the chat. We asked the question right before we went to break. With everything that is at play ahead of Portland, it's amazing that we were talking mock drafts for weeks now, having Donovan Klingen's floor being at 7 to Portland, where that would be the furthest that he would drop. We could see him go as high as 1. We could see teams that are being rumored to trade up into that 3 spot to draft him at 3, which would just throw a wrench into everything in the draft process. A guy that we have not talked about a whole lot, or 2 guys that we haven't talked a whole lot about, are Reed Sheppard and Modest Buzelis. And if the draft really does get sideways on us and things get weird, if either one of those guys fall to 7, is it take the big swing and projection on the upside with a guy like Buzelis? Is it take the best player available and go for a guy like Reed Sheppard? What do you feel right now as we're heading in about 4.5 hours out from the first pick being selected?
There's just so much as far as the evaluation process, and it depends on what you want to hear. If you're looking for somebody to say that the Blazers should look at Modest Buzelis, then that's out there. I can go into my phone right now and I can basically find any particular scout or evaluator, and whatever player I want to go to whatever team, I can find that opinion. That's how scattered this draft is right now. I just tweeted it out a few minutes ago. I've heard Rob Dillingham is a player that could move into the top 5 right now. And 2 days ago, that was a non-starter, and I heard it from one person 2 days ago. And then I heard it from 3 people. And then I heard it from 4. And then I heard it from 5. And then I heard it from another source this morning. And I was like, holy shnikes. And, like, that's the thing is, like, I think what one exec told me as far as, like, their board being so different from mocks is very true. Yeah, there's a lot of chalk in the sense of, like, what's being put out there, but I think teams that are actually picking in the top 10 are uncertain, and there's a lot more caution being thrown to the wind, or a lot less caution being thrown to the wind. So could Portland take a look at a guy like Modest Buzelis? Yeah, they could. And that's the thing is, like, could they look at a guy like Tijan Salon? Absolutely. That's very much on the table. I have some sources that still think that the Blazers are very much looking at Zach Edey at 14. No one is looking at Zach Edey at 7.
No.
Not a single person.
Kevin O'Connor is really pushing Edey at 7.
I have gotten very serious pushback. Kristen Peak came on our show and laughed at it. I know she did another appearance where she said Edey at 7 is a fireable offense. So there's very strong opinions about Edey at 7 for sure. I have heard Edey has interest from the Grizzlies. If for whatever reason they can't get to Klingen, they could trade out of 9 and move back, potentially to 14, to Portland. If Portland sees somebody at 9 after the Spurs pick, they go, hey, we know that the Jazz are looking at wings too. If for whatever reason the wing that we want is there at 9, we could probably do that. And then you take a look at the Memphis Grizzlies taking Zach Edey. So much of this is eye of the beholder, and then the process of what's in front of you. And I think so much of what happens tonight is going to be determined by what happens in front of you. And I know that's always every draft, but this is even more drastic where you have a general idea of Team X is going to do this. Yeah. Right now, it's like, ow. There's a lot of that going on right now. So, could the Blazers take a look at the long-term runway for Matas Buzelis? Absolutely.
Yeah, Gateway on the YouTube says Matas seems like the perfect fit in PDX. 6'10", irrational confidence, can pass, dribble, hopefully shoot.
The dribble.
The old hopefully shoot.
Yeah, the dribbling's like that's more theory. It's like, yeah, he's got a better handle than most guys that are like big.
6'10".
Yeah, but like I've watched a ton of film on him and I've seen him live. He gets pushed around a ton.
Yeah,
he's got to learn how to leverage his body. Honestly, I'm significantly less worried about the shooting and more worried about his inability to leverage his size.
Yeah. And that is something that, though, with his age, and he does have the frame to fill out and be a guy who you can kind of coach him along and kind of teach him along the way, and hopefully that's what you're banking on. That's a big upside, big swing type guy. You know, Kirk on the YouTube chat is saying, hey, if we can get Matas and then move up and get Tejan Salon as well, I mean, that would be the hopping in front of Utah, getting back into 9 from 14, and then you can get a guy like Salon. That's kind of where I'm at, where biggest holes on this roster right now for moving forward into the future. We know Jeremy Grant is a really good 4. He is more than serviceable at the 4. But it is the 3 and the 4. The more bodies that you can get in there, especially in a draft like this where you have 2 picks and you're going to be in a position where you can take some of those bigger swings, fill out those spots as much as you can. And then you let the competition play out over this next season, whether it's Toumani Camara, Matisse Thybulle, Ryan Rupert, whomever they draft. Like, let them just go and figure it out, because this is where Portland is at in their rebuild.
Yeah, you go full Joker. You break the pool cue in half, and you go, all right, whoever comes out.
That's right.
Look, I mean, I'm being serious. No, it's a real thing. It's like, yes, you can have too many guys, but also somebody needs to separate themselves from the herd. As much as I love these guys, like, as people. And when you're in the locker rooms, when you 41 times, and you spend practices and you spend hours before game and hours after games talking to the guys, you build relationships with all.
Yeah.
I love these guys, but this is also the most competitive industry in the world when you're talking about cutthroat. There's only so many positions. There's 450 spots in the league. If you ain't got it, the next guy, literally in this draft, is coming to take your job.
And I mean, going back to things that we said yesterday, and look, this is the subterfuge time where people are trying to undercut and make sure they're weaseling for position all over the place. This is smoke signal season to the nth degree. What we went back to yesterday is that we both were like, all right, and I think it's smart to revisit these things when you get to draft day and all the information that's just flooding in, is that Cody Williams was the guy that everybody was kind of projecting to and looking at 7. Tejan Salon, also a guy that at 7, who everybody was looking for and projecting to. If one of those 2 guys is available, I still think that is the move for Portland, because those are 2 of the guys that they've done the most digging on as well. And the guys that they have dove into, scouted, worked out, and we've, like, when you hear the same names over and over again through the draft process, we can still connect those dots and say, all right, not much is going to change in a wholesale unless one of their guys that they have is like a top 3 ends up falling in their lap, whether that's Donovan Clingan, whether that's, Reed Shepard, Matas Buzelis, wherever they have those guys, mocked in their top prospects. Unless one just falls into your lap, I still go back to Cody Williams. I still go back to Tejan Salon.
One of the interesting things is, and I think we can talk about this a little bit later, is the Hornets could be in a prime position to kind of screw with the Blazers yet again in year 2, because the Hornets are picking directly in front of them.
Let's dive into that next, because last year it was Brandon Miller, and then the Blazers ended up selecting Scoot Henderson at 3. This year, the Charlotte Hornets sit at 6, and the Blazers sit at 7 directly behind them. And it very easily could happen where they throw the Blazers for a loop for a second straight year. Danny and Dusty on the Fan.
Hello, sports fan.
Those guys in Charlotte going to screw us over again, Danny?
I mean, there's an opportunity for him to try to leverage somebody. Cody Williams has been linked to them a lot over the last couple of days. I've heard that the group of guys that they're looking at, Reed Shepherd, Dalton Connect, Cody Williams, is kind of that group. And if Dalton doesn't go 6, I think there's a good chance he actually could fall outside the top 10. I think he's a candidate for a kind of a faller, so to speak. I could see Chicago being a landing spot for him, but last year
they're at 11.
Yep. The last year though, the Hornets had the number 2 overall pick. The Blazers had number 3, and the Hornets did call and say, "Hey, do you want to trade up to 2?" And they asked for a pretty righteous sum to move up 1 pick. Now it was a draft where guys were looked at a lot higher. But Charlotte tried to really leverage things in the closing hours leading into the draft, and the Blazers said, "Nah, that's too steep. We're not interested in doing that." And ultimately, they took the best prospect available in Scoot Henderson in their eyes.
This is good. Now, here would be the interesting prospect for me. We've talked about this. You have 2 first-round picks this year, 2 second-round picks this year. The Portland Trail Blazers do. If there is a situation where that threat of Cody Williams is there. Okay, so 4 draft picks this year. You've already got, when you consider the options that will be picked up from guys that are on this roster right now, we already have 12 roster spots that have been filled out by Portland. Okay, with the 4 draft picks available, could we see Portland say, "All right, we're not going to do this year. if we like Cody Williams, we're going to go get Cody Williams, and we'll give up a pick to make sure we get our guy.
I have not heard the Blazers involved in any of those kind of discussions.
They have wanted to use both picks from the get-go.
Yeah, and I don't. As much as there was that discussion about the Blazers are entertaining moving up for Donovan Clingan, I think they did their due diligence, but I have not heard anything that would indicate that they got that deep into any discussions.
Yeah.
Now, does that change in the next 3 hours? Yeah. Sure. But at this point, no. I don't think they would. But as we always say, the impetus for action is always an event, and that's being on the clock. If the Hornets are on the clock and the Hornets call the Blazers and say, hey, you sure you don't want to? Do they change?
Yeah.
And I think that's always I know it sounds like a cop-out, but that's the reality of this stuff, is that so much of it depends on when the pressure is applied and how it's applied.
And look, this is something that this came in on the Vancouver Ford text line, 503-864-6326. Your dollar goes further at Vancouver Ford. They treat you right before, during, and after the sale. Visit them online at vancouverford.com. Wanting clarification, picks in this draft can be traded up until 1 hour prior to the draft starts. And then trades will happen as they are on the clock otherwise. So from 4 to 5 p.m., picks are locked until the pick is on the clock.
That's how it's been done historically. I can't find any changes within the new CBA, so I believe that's still the case. So.
Yeah. That is always silly, though. When guys get drafted, they're forced to put on the hat for the team that we know they're not playing for.
They changed it already at the draft lottery. Remember, instead of showing the Warriors card at 14, they showed the Blazers card. So maybe instead of having the agreed upon in principle and where they put on the wrong hat, just let them put on the right hat.
Yeah.
We all know that. What if the trade doesn't go through and he's wearing the wrong? Then somebody screwed up and they gave the wrong Brooks up for the trade.
You will have one photo that it's a footnote in history that this guy was drafted and it didn't work and the trade fell through, as opposed to every draft day trade where these guys are forced to put on a hat for a team they will never play for.
Yes. And it's funny
we
to go
have
back into
multiple
those.
of them. Yeah.
You go back into those and you see the Andrew Wiggins wearing a Cavs hat. We all know this isn't happening. Why are we pretending?
So we're going to probably see in what as you said, deadline spur action. There's teams that want to get these trades done in the hopper as early as they possibly can, because then you can really start going through your draft and solidifying what you want to do.
Yes and no.
The mess in all of it is that because of 5, 6, 7, where there could be the anarchy. That's why the teams want to move up to 3, because you know what's going to happen more or less at 1 and 2.
And that's the thing is so if you're Houston, that's what you're saying. Look, behind us, you don't really know. Here you have an idea, and I think that's everybody's waiting for Houston. And then I think you'll see draft day trades as far as the draft pick type. Now, the Brooklyn Nets are a team that they are flagging they have no picks in this draft. Now, they have 4 picks next year, and they're going a hard reset. Cam Johnson is a guy that is sought after. There's multiple teams I know that are chasing him, and Dorian Finney-Smith. Does a team look at Cam Thomas and be like, hey, do you want to go get some buckets somewhere else, or do you want to be in Brooklyn and get 40 shots a night? Which I think that actually might be something he'd like.
Just treat it like the G League.
Yeah,
night.
I can get as many up as I want here. Because that man, if he was, if you're playing 2K with him, you should not be able to pass the ball. Because that man is a chucker if there ever was one. And I don't say that begrudgingly. The man knows what he does. The other thing that everybody else is waiting for beyond those kind of moves are the big moves. And that's what's going to happen with Paul George, because that domino has massive implications across the NBA as far as power structures and how teams are lined up.
Well, we can't really determine what's going to happen with Paul George right now.
Nope.
We are going to have to wait until second week of July.
Oh no, it might happen before
or
that.
The first week of July.
That's what I'm saying. There's real smoke around the potential for a Paul George deal in the next 12 hours.
With the Clippers or
somewhere else.
Oh wow! How does that happen when free agency hasn't started?
Because they can agree to trade him.
Yeah,
they can do a sign and trade. That's something you can agree to before free agency starts. That's totally allowable.
And do a sign and trade, but the rumored teams that are interested in Paul George right now are all teams that have cap space for a max slot that they can
could potentially move some
that.
things around, like the Golden State Warriors. Dun, 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 dun.
What do you mean by that? Let's dive into that.
There's a lot there they can do. They have Chris Paul's contract that they can use as expiring. All they need to do is push the date out on it, and they can manifest.
You know what's great about that is then you would have a Clippers team and him going back to the Clippers and with Russell Westbrook, James Harden as well.
Well,
that'd be sweet.
I think there's an opportunity that Harden is also not on that team going forward.
The no ring club all together.
Everybody's chasing it together, and Kawhi's sitting there like, I got mine. But a combination, and they don't have to do Chris Paul. They could also do some version of Andrew Wiggins and Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga. There's a lot there. There's also potential deals around Darius Garland that I've heard across the league, as well as Brandon Ingram. Still haven't heard anything about Trae Young or DeJounte Murray.
And they have to make some moves in Atlanta right now.
And I think the onus is on them to trade one of them tonight. And I think that they're going to trade Trae. But he's also harder to trade.
Yeah.
Because he costs more money and the defensive deficiencies and the way you have to build around him.
Well, because he's so limited in really everything except for shooting the ball.
Shooting, driving, finishing, playmaking. No, he's great at those.
I mean, playmaking, yes.
Yeah, but no, he's not a driver, he's a finisher. He's still very good.
I just don't like Trae Young.
Get in line.
Not a fan.
Look, man,
I'm not a fan of his game either.
I don't. That's fair too. Like, I think there's a lot of players in the NBA that aren't a fan of his game because the way that Trae Young has been described to me by other players in the NBA is like Trae gets to decide when you get to touch the ball. So. I think there's a lot of guys that look at that and
that's the guy you want with the ball in his hand every single possession.
Yeah, so I would say that's mildly problematic at best, but he doesn't have. I don't get into the personal stuff and the rumor mills and that kind of stuff too often, but I would say Trae Young, the fan club among NBA players, as far as playing with him, he's probably one of the least liked in that regard.
Okay, we've got a ton that we need to get to still, including the Rockets and what they're going to do with Sengun and the ability to maybe bring in Kevin Durant, which has been rumored overnight after the Mikal Bridges trade happened. Phoenix, by the way, full disclosure, is saying...
Shooting that down.
No. Hard no. Would you like Bradley Beal, though? Which I don't think anybody else wants.
Smart
either.
move. Smart move.
I mean, yeah, it is. They're pulling the.
Can I interest you?
You call for Tom Brady, we'll give you Jimmy Garoppolo type deal, except for Jimmy Garoppolo's arm fell off. We got Rockets. We've got the Portland Trail Blazers in the interest that is being showed by other teams for guys like Jeremy Grant, Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams. There's a lot of movement that could happen on the Portland Trail Blazers roster as well. But where we got to start hour number 2, Corey Teleba is he's a curator of vibes for No Ceilings. He's the founder of No Ceilings. They've got their composite mock draft that is finalized. It is out, and he joins us next. This is Danny and Dusty live from 10 Barrel Brewing in the Pearl, 14th and Flanders. Come down, have lunch, have a brew, and watch all things basketball here at 10 Barrel Brewing, right here on The Fan. And Dusty with you live at 10 Barrel Brewing right here in the heart of the Pearl District. 14th at Flanders, come down party. We'll be here for the fan draft party until 7 o'clock tonight. The Portland Trailblazers have the 7th and 14th picks in the first round of this draft. Danny, you said yesterday your excitement level was at a 13 on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Where are you at right now?
Like negative 1,000, but that's only because I've just been buried
negative 1,000.
I've just been buried in my phone. I haven't allowed myself. I think once we get off air, I think that's when I'll allow myself to start. Like,
I am so disappointed in you. You know what? Let's bring on some other
Hey!
draft insider then. Corey Tulaba is, and I have high hopes for what his excitement level is for this, because he is the curator of Vibes, and he's also the founder of No Ceilings. He joins us again. Corey, where are you at? Scale of 1 to 10 excitement level heading into the draft.
Oh, plus 1,000.
That's what I'm talking
there's the
about.
setup.
See, that's the energy I needed in my life. It's a crazy day. It's very busy. I'm sure in your world right now. There is so much smoke signals being thrown out by every team in every direction. When you come into draft day, or do you settle into what you were thinking the day before, or are you open and kind of taking in all of the information and misinformation that comes through?
I'm certainly open to it. That's part of the fun of enjoying this whole process. I think what information I take in most seriously is, the stuff that I hear from the people that I trust that have any kind of track record. Otherwise, I'm just going to enjoy it and see how it plays out. I mean, at the end of the day, much like, the trade deadline, a lot of these things are being discussed. It's just sometimes things don't get to the finish line. So, I try to approach it as both an analyst as a fan. And I think, that's kind of, if you're really, really into the draft, who doesn't get excited about, players with outcomes from 1 to 7 or trades that may or may not happen.
Corey, so much of this draft is we've spent this whole cycle talking about, how good or bad it is, or whether it's a role player or lacking stars. We're here on draft day, and the excitement is still there. There's people talking themselves into player X or player Y and what deal is happening. As it sits right now, it sounds like 1 and 2 are mostly settled in with Sarr, Riza and Sarr. 3 appears to be that spark point for either Houston making a move or Donovan Clingan moving up. What do you kind of see as the first of all, your most likely outcome, and then not necessarily the craziest outcome, but what do you kind of see happening if things don't go chalk at 3 or Houston does make a move?
Well, the craziest thing that would happen if Houston made a move is that Kevin Durant would be going to Houston, I think, based on what has been reported. That would be the most shocking. I think the most realistic, because I feel like chalk a lot of the time is the thing that most oftentimes happens. As much as Mikal Bridges was linked to the Knicks, right? Nobody thought it was happening the night before the draft. So I would say that the most likely outcome is that Reed Shepherd is headed to Houston. I'm a huge Reed Shepherd fan, and I think he's an unbelievable fit for that team, just based on the fact that he can kind of fill in all of the gaps and the little weaknesses that they have with his shooting and quick processing and those hit-ahead passes to the athletes. But, yeah, I mean, look, Donovan Clingan, you have to take into consideration that he's another option for that team, too. I mean, if there is a KD trade in some scenario, I mean, he's definitely been linked there. And he's personally my number 1 prospect on my own court. So I think if he went 3, it would be perfectly acceptable that a team would take him that early. So it's definitely right now the most chaotic pick. But with that said, even though it seems like the first 2 picks are settled in stone, Woj was reporting that Jabari Smith was going first 30 minutes before Paulo Banchero's name was called. So we don't truly know, and I think that's part of the fun.
Founder of No Ceilings, Corey Tulaba is our guest. All right, there could be chaos happening 1 through 6, but the Portland Trailblazers, which is what everybody here wants to know, what's your sense of what will be available and where Portland will go at that 7th overall pick?
I think they'd love for Donovan Clingan to be available at that pick still. In a lot of different scenarios, that could be a realistic option. If he's gone, I think that names to watch would be Dalton Connect and Matas Zealous. Definitely a little bit of Cody Williams in there as well, but I think that the team is definitely looking to add shooting to the roster, and Dalton Knecht can certainly shoot the ball. So if he were to be there still, I think he would be strongly considered with the pick.
We've heard a lot of up, down, back, forth, left, right, and everything else in between about what could happen at 14, because there's so much that could happen between 8 and 13 and how things shake out there. There's a number of names that have been linked to the Portland Trail Blazers, most recently Zach Edey, but also Kaishan George, both of who came through in the same workout. When you get to 14, which feels so far down the road, which way do you think Portland goes if those guys, I guess, are on the board?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've heard that Portland really likes Keyshawn George a lot, along with Toronto. So, but Zach Edey is kind of undeniable, right? I mean, if there's smoke to Portland being interested in Clingan, which I think that they are, Zach Edey isn't Donovan Clingan, but I mean, he's not all that dissimilar in play style, just being 7'5", 300 pounds, can score this back to the basket, but is also a really good lob threat, and just through sheer size is definitely a rim deterrent. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did go in that route. I've heard that it's a very realistic option. And I think a name, kind of a wild card in that situation to pay attention to, would be Bub Carrington, if he's still on the board out of Pittsburgh.
Bub Carlton Carrington. I just found out that was his real name. I just knew him as Bub like the entire time. So this is brand new to me, and I would love to have a Carlton Carrington on the Blazers roster. As you look at it, Corey, who could be the biggest riser that you see in this draft? A guy that has kind of been lurking, and maybe a team falls in love with him and pops up the draft board and he ends up being in the top 5 or into the top 10, who he's kind of buried and outside of the lottery throughout the process?
Man, that is such a hard question because of how fluid everything has gone. I would say maybe Jacoby Walter. You could probably still find him in some lottery conversations, but he was a guy who preseason was, potentially a top 10 guy, came out of the gate really hot, and then just really inconsistent. But he is still a wing who can shoot really effectively in a number of ways. So if there was a team, and things have been quiet on his front, there hasn't been a whole lot of leaks going on. So there might be a team there who's just like, you know what, I'm betting on the pedigree, I'm betting on his measurements, I'm betting on the attributes, the shooting, the shooter's league. I think he's going to defend. We just got to coach him up. I could see him being a name that goes from outside the conversation as a faller to somebody who maybe sneaks back up and can sneak into that top 10.
Speaking of sneaking into the top 10, over the past 24 hours, Rob Dillingham's name has come up a ton.
Sneaky.
How much do you buy into these late risers, whether it's Dillingham, whether it's Walter, and how much of that do you think is perhaps teams just trying to put one last bit of smoke out there before, things start to lock down for the draft?
Yeah, well, I've never really bought that Dillingham was going to drop as much as he has in recent weeks. I mean, I'm not to say that it's impossible. I think in the draft we realize that this happens all the time. Last year, Cam Whitmore fell to 20 for, a number of reasons. And Dillingham is a 6'1" guard with like a 6'2" wingspan, and he's 165 pounds. But if that's the reason that he started falling, because it was right around the time of the combine is when he started to drop. If that's the reason, like, I don't know, if you watched him, you'd be like, hey, there's a guy who's really skinny, who doesn't have long arms, and like it's all stuff you already knew. So I think there's a chance he even goes as high as 5. He is visited with Detroit. But yeah, I mean, because of his size, it's certainly possible that he drops, but it's hard to parse with a guy like him because he was in that like potential top 3 conversation for so long, and he just started dropping because of measurements that, to be honest, all these teams already knew about before the combine. So I would say that, while he was dropping on mocks, I personally never believed he was going to escape the top 10.
Based on what you're hearing, what you know, and what you like, who are your best fits for Portland 7-14?
Based on what I like, I would say Dalton Connect at 7. And I like Zach Edey at 14. I'd also like Bub Carrington there. I'm a big Bub Carrington guy, and I think there's reason that he's rising. But to be honest, I think they're going to have a lot of options. Keyshawn George is another guy that I just 6'8", 40% from three and can pass. So they can go a number of different directions. I kind of think unless there's something super outlandish, they're in a pretty good spot to get a player who I think could stick at both positions.
Corey, we really appreciate the time, man. I know it has been a hectic NBA draft process for you on draft day. Really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and have a chat. Thank you very much, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys.
There he is, Corey Teleba, NBA draft analyst, No Ceilings NBA. Go ahead, give him a follow. He's at NBA or at Corey Teleba, NBA Draft Dude on Twitter. Great stuff from Corey. And look, this is going to be a hectic night. How many of the draft, insiders that we've talked to have all said the same thing, which is, I have no earthly idea how this thing's going to shake out.
Yeah, no, it's because we all have our biases, our suspicions, and the thoughts and opinions about stuff. But until this stuff actually happens, this isn't even about how right somebody is going to be, because somebody's going to have a mock that does really well, but the process behind it isn't going to make any sense, because how you got to player X at whatever pick is going to be a situation when you go, yeah, but this team traded, and this team traded, and this team moved here, and this team made a trade outside of the draft that made this a more viable deal. Bub Carrington is a guy who is an interesting one, 6'4.5", 6'5" guard from Pitt, who didn't expect to be a one and done, came out and really showed out. I've heard Carrington's name linked to a couple different teams recently, and he has been rising up a little bit. I've also heard Portland looking around at other guards, which would kind of lead you to believe that there's probably a guard going out, at least at bare minimum. And before everybody freaks out like, oh my God, they're taking a guard again. If they make a trade where a guard is no longer there, it's good to have more young guard depth. It's fine there. We've talked about Dalton Connect endlessly. I'm okay with Dalton, but if Salon or Williams is on the board, I squint at it a little bit.
Yeah,
for sure. Because, look, I don't think it would be a bad pick, and I get the idea behind it, but I don't think Dalton Connect is a starting level 3 in the NBA. I don't think he projects to that. I don't think a Scoot, Shaden, Dalton team makes a ton of sense as far as your long term, where if Cody Williams did hit, I think that makes sense with him at the 3. If Dejan Salon hit, it makes sense with him at the 4. I look at Dalton more as a juiced-up kind of bench scorer, which isn't a bad thing.
No, and you know what you're going to be getting out of him.
And I love his mentality. I think he's a dude. He can score at all 3 levels. He's a competitor. He's a better athlete than people say because, he's white.
Yeah.
But it's a real thing.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, he's sneaky athletic.
He's not sneaky athletic. He's athletic. He balled hard in the SEC, which that's the most athletic conference in the country. That's if you can't hang there, that's kind of like it's a weird spot.
All right, let's get into. You said movement can happen. We heard it from Corey as well. We could see names that are already currently in the NBA switching teams. We've already seen Mikal Bridges be the first one. Matt Ishbia, owner of the Phoenix Suns, he has spoken. We'll get to that, but. Let's dive into likelihood of Blazers moving a veteran, because we could see veterans being moved in the next 4 hours here to try to jockey for position and bolster rosters moving forward. This is Danny and Dusty on The Fan.
Built for power.
Can I throw out a candidate for potential worst day on the web?
Go on.
Like he could be the potential worst day on the web. Matt Ishbia.
Sure.
That's
there.
We can have that conversation because this could just be careening into the side of the mountain for the Phoenix Suns. But we've already seen Mikal Bridges moved. We know that teams are going to be jockeying for this positioning. And you made a very good point yesterday, and you've made it several times, but I'd like to reiterate it. A lot of teams are going to try to position because some teams need to get under the apron before the league new year starts July 1.
Yeah.
Right?
June 30th.
Or June 30th, heading into July 1, right? And then you go, there's other teams, so those teams are going to try to shed some salary right now. But there's also teams that want to have salary slots available to manipulate and work with post-new league year. And so that has led us to seeing moves like we made with the Brooklyn Nets, sending Mikal Bridges to New York. And that opens up the door in the possibilities for the Blazers to be active today and leading up to June 30th. What is the likelihood that you see the Blazers moving off of a Brogdon, Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle, Jeremy Grant leading up to the draft in 4.5 hours?
The only names that I've heard with any substance at all have been Brogdon and Jeremy Grant.
Yep.
There have been discussions around, basically everyone, because that's how this always goes. But the ones that have kind of come back to me is, hey, Team X is checking in on Jeremy. They would like to get Jeremy.
I got drops on the road,
fellas.
like it. I accidentally hit that one.
There you go, a little misfire. That
wasn't me.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't me. That was Russ.
That one was me.
Studio. Okay. The other one is, this team is poised to take a run at Malcolm if X goes this way. And that's what I think. Their teams are lining things up. If X, then Y. If Y, then Z. And I think that's how you're going to see the order of transaction is once the periphery is kind of tightened up around things, and I think that the periphery, a lot of that has to do with an understanding of what Paul George is or isn't going to do and the cascading effect out of that. Or if you see a bigger move like a Darius Garland. I think, and if you see a Darius Garland traded to New Orleans for like Brandon Ingram, if they throw in Herb Jones, I think that's they grab the starting gun, and it's like, okay, this is going here, this is going here, this is going here, but I still think Paul George is going to be that bell cow before we start seeing anything else. Or teams that just go, look, as much as we want to be in the Paul George sweepstakes, we can't get into it.
Yeah.
You're going to make your call regardless. You do your due diligence, but the why are you calling me, please lose my number phone call leads you to go, okay, if we know we're going to miss out on this, what if we're first in line for this other guy?
Yeah.
And I think that's what teams are trying to do, is trying to get these deals lined up ahead of time to try to be ready for when that comes.
I'm so interested in seeing kind of what happens with the star player movement that we had this discussion yesterday. The NBA is trying to curb that, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to curb star movement because it's bad for business when you have stars jumping all over the place. But it seems like with the way things are framed right now, we may see more than ever happening.
The preempt the new CBA.
Yeah, because it's like, our books, we need to get our books right, and our books need to be clean. It may have the most adverse effect, and we could see a lot of, whether they are stars that are in their prime right now or on the back end of their prime, or guys like even, Klay Thompson and the Warriors had a conversation just the other day about his future and what it looks like with him in Golden State. We could see guys that are past their prime on, the back 40 of their career, but those are big names that still have a little bit of gas left in the tank.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't think Klay Thompson's going to be, again, that bell cow as far as
he's not,
opportunities. But
he's not making any moves.
He is up there because, that's a big salary slot. He's still a good player. He still shot 40% from three. He's still a 17-point-per-game scorer. And the Warriors are a potential landing spot for Paul George. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on down that
And I'll
path.
tell you what, the domino effect of guys like Klay Thompson is something that people in Portland need to have their eye on, because if he ends up in a place, say, Orlando, where Orlando and Portland have been linked and going back and forth, whether it was, Anthony Simons or Scoot Henderson or whomever. We could see, a Klay Thompson move to Orlando where he has been linked to because they need shooting in the worst way possible. That could affect a potential deal with Portland. I mean, there's a lot of these guys. I mean, Paul George to Golden State probably doesn't affect Portland all that much, but
it
the
does
dominoes
in the sense of
could
the assets going out.
Could start to a wholesale movement.
And that's what I think is like once everybody knows, okay, now Philadelphia, they've got all this cap space. They've got to move quick to capitalize. And I've heard some rumblings. I don't know how much I believe them about the Philadelphia 76ers making overtures to OG Anunoby. Because he is actually a free agent now.
Yep.
So, and they have a ton of money to go ahead and throw at him. And, what if they added OG Anunoby and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope?
That would be pretty scary.
Right? Now you've got Tyrese Maxey, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, OG Anunoby, insert forward here in Joel Embiid.
And then you just hope Embiid can stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean,
hope and pray
and OG Anunoby, but
start sacrificing in Philly, which is a scary proposition because that fan base would be willing to sacrifice.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is you have to hide your dogs and cats and anything else flammable at that point in time. But like these are the kind of machinations that are being discussed in front offices. Like if something comes out of left field, like you can't sit there and be like, well, we know the Knicks want Mikal Bridges, but are they going to give up 5 first-round picks? Most people didn't believe another Rudy Gobert deal was going to happen. The Knicks left 4 unprotected picks. That's a big haul, man. Like everybody's like, well, the Knicks are going to be good. What happens if they Memphis? What happens if they Memphis?
You know what?
And all of a sudden, they're injured everywhere.
But if you're a Knicks fan, well, you mean like they were this year?
What happens? What happens if that happens in the regular season?
But if you are a fan base, wouldn't you much rather have your GM, your team president, put him on the table and say,
absolutely.
We're making a run for it
saying,
now?
But there is
the
real risk
Neil
there.
O'Shea,
Yeah, no, there's
where everything
real
was
risk.
protected, and now we're sitting there looking at, when is the Chicago pick going to convey?
Well, it's protected until 2028, and then it turns into, I think,
second-round
2
pick.
seconds.
Yeah.
So, and then actually after that, I think it's only 1 year of 2 seconds, and then it turns into nothing. So, but yeah, I'm not worried about that pick and the protections and whether or not it conveys.
I don't care about that. What I'm saying is, Neil O'Shea never put him on the table and said, we're pushing all in. I would much rather be in the situation that New York Knicks fan base is in right now, because you head into this 2024-25 season with anticipation that you're going to have a good roster. You hope Tibbs doesn't run them into the ground again. You built yourself to compete with the top teams in your conference, and you've set yourself up to say, all right, we can make a run at a championship right now. We can go ahead and do this. We just had a guy walk in. He looks like Rob. He's got a beard and a Padres hat on.
Yeah, wow.
He looks like he could golf right now. He could host a radio show right now. He's got the Rob vibe going on right now.
He
with
a
the
little
Padres
lean back in his walk, too.
Yeah.
He didn't call you any terrible names, though.
Yeah, no. That only happens when I ever and Sukanik walks in the door.
I say when a door opens, they walk in and you're in the room.
I'll tell you what, you'll want to be here at about 2:55 when they walk in the door, because you'll get to hear what nobody hears in the show transition. We're at 10 Barrel Brewing, 14th and Flanders.
I don't think they do that here in public.
Oh, that's adorable. That's adorable that you think that way.
Yeah.
But I'm excited because now the Knicks, everybody says NBA is better when the Knicks and Lakers are good. No, I'm actually excited about this Knicks team because of the boom-bust potential that they have set themselves up for.
Sure.
And it could just go south in a hurry with everything that you said. They are an injury away from it going downhill as fast as could be. But it's exciting because they have that window open. I could care less if the Knicks win a title, but at least they put them on the table and said, we're pushing all in.
No, they're not even actually all in. They still have some capital left. That's kind of the crazy thing. Is that
with Randall, with
not just that, they have some picks left too.
Mitch Rob.
Yeah, they have some stuff left in the cabinet. The cabinet is not bare. That's what the Knicks are in a great spot. Turns out it's super fun when have assets and be able to cash them in and have opportunities.
Well, and that's what Joe Cronin has been trying to do here in Portland, is assemble a war chest
so that when the opportunity arises,
so you can make those moves. That's where Oklahoma City is going to need to start making moves, because they have far more picks than they have roster spots available with a young, talented core. I desperately want Portland to be in that position one day where they can say, we're pushing all in. It's going to be a while, though. It ain't going to be this year. It ain't going to be next year, probably. But that's where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think this is another part of that process of setting the table up so that you can capitalize. Remember, it took the Knicks a couple years to kind of get here. If I told you 3 years ago the Knicks would be a team that you would see as a potential team in the NBA Finals at the end of this year, you would have laughed hysterically. The only person who would be like, yeah, I believe that is Knicks fans because they believe everything that they're told. But look, Knicks fans, I love you. You guys are mostly fun. Some of you are outright lunatics, but I think that's the part of the process that's nobody likes talking about is you've got to reap before you can sow, or sow before you can reap. So that's what you do in the early stages.
And then you reap what you sow.
Yes, there you go.
That's how that whole thing works, huh?
I don't like it when I have to reap everything that I sow. That's not always fun. Speaking of fun, coming up on Worst Day on the Web, we need to get rid of AI now.
Oh,
for the love of God, we've gone too far already. But first, it's the Big Kahuna with Sports Center Update.
Hamburgers, the cornerstone of any nutritious breakfast.
Now, from the Fan Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
Jeff Rust here with your Sports Center update. First on the Fan, the NBA draft is finally here this evening. The Trailblazers with picks 7 and 14 in the first round and 34 and 40 in the second round. Still no idea of their plans. Still a lot of uncertainty in the picks that precede them. Danny and Dusty in primetime with Isaac and Suk. Live from 10 Barrel Pub in the Pearl from now all the way till 7 o'clock. ESPN radio coverage of the draft starts at 4 o'clock on 910 ESPN Portland. Shams Charania of The Athletic reporting the Heat and center Bam Adebayo intend to sign a 3-year, $166 million max extension through the 2028-29 season. On the diamond, the Mariners looking to avoid the sweep in Tampa. They took a 5-1 lead over the Rays into the bottom of the ninth. They loaded the bases with nobody out, but only gave up 1 run. 5-2 is your final. Cal Raleigh with a 3-run home run. George Kirby gets the win. 6 innings pitched, 1 run, no walks, and 7 strikeouts. Meanwhile, the Astros, they're hosting the Rockies, bottom of the 8th in Houston, and they lead Colorado 7-1. And they're in the bottom of the 9th in Milwaukee. The Rangers and Brewers are knotted up at 5 apiece. And the U.S. women's national team roster has been announced for the first time since 2008. It will not include forward Alex Morgan, but Portland Thorns midfielder Sam Coffey did make the cut as the U.S. looks for their first gold since 2012 in London. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust at the Fan Sports Desk. Listen live or on demand on the Odyssey app, the Fan's desktop player, or tell your smart speaker to play 1080 The Fan.
Got a smart speaker? It's The Fan in your office and every room of your home. Tell your smart speaker to play 1080 The Fan. Today's worst day on the web. With Danny and Dusty on Odyssey and 1080 The Fan.
Well, that sucks.
Today's worst day on the web, brought to you by some idiot at NBC.
Yeah. This is weird.
NBC has announced that it's going to use AI to recreate Al Michaels' voice for custom recaps during the 2024 Olympics. Look, we don't do the hologram with Tupac, and we don't do Al Michaels' voice.
I'm in for the hologram with Tupac.
That's weird.
I'm in for the hologram. Now, if we give hologram of Al Michaels superimposed swimming against Michael Phelps in the pool, now I'm even more in.
Nah, this is weird.
He calls the play-by-play.
I don't like any of this, and it would be a little bit weirder if all of a sudden Al Michaels was actually rapping as Tupac.
This is... I don't like this one bit. And we saw this, remember with the writers' strike and the actors' strike, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had all the studios wanting to have actors sign into their contracts that they could use their voice, image, and likeness in AI moving forward. And they were like, no. Because then you don't
into
need
perpetuity,
to
which means
pay
I
us.
don't need to exist.
Yeah, and you can just use me, and I won't even be needed any longer. It's scary. It's creepy when you hear the AI stuff and how detailed and dialed in it can be. And do you remember that was the 2016 election when the big thing was deepfakes?
Mm-hmm.
And here we are 8 years later, and we're like, yeah, Al Michaels going to be narrating the Olympics for you. Nothing to worry about here.
Yeah,
there's nothing to worry about here.
Nothing untowards here. Nothing bad will possibly happen. My wife and I went to the Cirque du Soleil Michael Jackson show in Vegas 2 years ago. And the hologram presentation of Michael Jackson,
Isn't it crazy?
It's a multi-million-dollar system that they run there. And it's from 40 feet away. It looks real. It looks like an actual person on stage. It's like they light it up like stage lighting, and you can't see through it. It looks solid. It looks like a real person, and it's not like that's a hologram. It's like, no, that looks like a person. It's creepy.
And so what they're going to do with Al Michaels, right, is it'll only be for on-demand recaps, right? So it's not live play-by-play.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean.
Still,
it's super weird because one thing that I love and something that you can't get out of a computer is the human element of a sporting event, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no way that they could genuinely reproduce like the Miracle on Ice call, right? Do you believe in miracles? Mm-hmm. I mean, you could go ahead and you could program and you can say things like that, but it's in that moment, the human response to what is happening. Play-by-play would be ruined by it. But for a recap of something, like it's off-putting for sure that it's going to be computer Al Michaels that is making these. But to be honest, all those things are scripted and read anyways in those recaps. Mm-hmm. Like, where I hope they don't say is that the recaps went so well, we'll just do it in live programming.
Well, that's the thing
right?
is once you open this door, you start going down it. And not only that, why are we doing this? Why can't somebody else just do what has always been done, which is do a live recap?
I mean, there are elements where it'd be like, for a Blazer fan, right? If you were to get like a Bill Schonely AI recap of a Blazers game.
I don't want it.
I don't want it either. There is a facet of Blazer fans that would love to hear that, though. Dodger fans getting recaps from Vin Scully. Lakers with Chick Hearn. There could be your beloved Cardinals with Skip Carey, right? But it would be so weird for me.
I'm going to go full Jurassic Park. Everybody was so concerned with whether they could. They didn't stop to think enough whether they should.
No.
They should not do this.
No.
They should not do this. What makes people great is that their lives are finite.
Here's the thing that I never understand is, like, who's coming up with these ideas and greenlighting them and being like, you know what? This is going to be great. This is going to be a fantastic idea. You think it's going to be cheap, though? Al Michaels probably charging him a pretty penny for it.
I would imagine he signed it up way as a lump sum.
Like he didn't read the fine print in his contract the last time he signed with NBC. And
it's NBC. Do you think they're sitting there paying per royalty?
Yeah. After watching the Olympic trials, I'm in on Snoop Dogg. He's going to be doing the
there we go.
live studio.
Let Snoop do either live reads or live studio stuff, or let him do the recaps.
Did you see him trying to figure out what the steeplechase was?
Yeah, it's great.
He was just sitting there like, oh, jeez. He jumped on that hurdle. You can do that? Oh, don't get wet. Yeah. Like it was gold the entire time. Give me Snoop on the steeplechase all day long.
Go full idiocracy. I'll go dumb before I go and animate somebody either who's dead or dying. Like, can we stop doing that? This desire to
dead or dying. Yeah, you are actively killing Al Michaels now.
He's not like getting healthier. He's like, how old is Al right now?
Al, he's, I don't know. Swag is saying 74. I heard Swag with the
79.
79 years old.
Again, I mean, get busy living or get busy dying. I don't think he's on the living side of it anymore.
Yeah.
Look, I love Al Michaels, but I mean, come on.
Like Snoop did MLB broadcasts too.
Yeah.
That was great.
I'm totally behind that. We have let's explore other avenues for other people as opposed to trying to animate somebody who's either not alive or somebody who's out of the game. Because again, I know this sounds like so philosophical, but part of what makes humans great is that their time is finite.
Yeah, their time is finite, and to be completely honest, everybody from a production standpoint wants you to be as vanilla as you can if you're doing play-by-play or you're doing a recap, right? But that human element is something that can't be replicated.
And
they're trying to do it.
And the unique part, they're trying to get the best of both worlds. They're trying to get Al Michaels doing vanilla, to give you to get you to care about the vanilla stupidity. And it's like, no, I want no part of this. Odyssey, if you're listening, you do not have the rights to AI my voice ever. Not that anybody would ever in this world do that, but I just want to throw that out there. Do not ever reanimate me, AI me, put me in a hologram. I want no part of it.
I can't wait until you get reanimated.
God.
I can't wait.
I mean, that might happen.
A kinder, gentler Danny
Meringue. Let's be
Meringue.
honest. Zombie Danny is going to be way worse.
Not. Dear Lord.
I mean, that's just the reality. We know. We all know this. All right, coming up next, another stupid decision that is having a lot of ramifications around college baseball. Danny and Dusty, today, the Fan.
The afternoon round of the 10th annual Fan Golf Classic at Langdon Farms on Thursday, July 11th. Presented by Autotown GMC.
Kristen Peak is putting up the first public smoke signal. The Charlotte Hornets are considering 6'10" French swingman Tijan Salon at pick number 6.
Nobody else has had that one yet?
Nope.
Like, what? I don't understand Charlotte as an organization.
There's been a
shift.
There's been a shift in the organization since they moved Kupchak out. They have a new general manager. They have a new head coach. They have a new president. They have new ownership. They have operated significantly more quietly in the shadows, as it were. There's still, I think, a lot of distrust in the organization because they've been so bad and they've been poor and
zero direction. Zero direction under the stewardship of one Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Yeah, it wasn't great, Bob. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of exactly what comes out of this. There was a lot of flagging last year, like, oh, they're going to take Scoot. They're going to take Scoot. And I had heard probably a week out that they were taking Brandon Miller. We've long heard them linked to Dalton Connect. We've long heard them linked to Reed Shepard. We've long heard them linked now to Cody Williams. There's a lot of Steph Castle was there, but now it seems very, 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 very unlikely that he will be available at pick 6. Yeah. We've heard him linked to Castle. So Salon being tossed in there is the first time that we've really seen an opportunity for a new challenger approaches, as it were, for the Charlotte Hornets. Particularly, how many? 4 hours before they made a draft?
The more and more we hear about it, the more and more things are playing out. Look, one of 3 guys is going to be there for Portland, right? That have long been linked to them. Mm-hmm. Donovan Clingan, which would be kind of pipe dream. A lot of people feel he will go far earlier. Tijan Salon, Cody Williams.
I think the fourth to that is Dalton Connect.
Dalton, do you think that? But if one of those 3 is available,
there are more than. I mean, we just had Corey Tello on who mentioned as well. If Connect is there are more than a few people that I have talked to in the NBA who think that Connect is the guy.
But do you think that is just based purely on he's a shooter? Portland needs shooters.
I think it's intel based.
And then you go from, because I would like Dalton Connect, but I think those 3 guys are the ones that we've heard the most smoke about.
Sure.
And Connect has been in there, so you're going to add him as a solid 4 in that group, or would you say
I think that's
that's a top tier, and then
no,
Connect
I think Connect is on that tier. Okay. I have personally pushed back against it, resisted it. I think not because I don't believe the people are telling me, I just don't want to believe it.
You don't want sneaky athletic.
It's not that I don't like Connect.
You don't like the gym rat.
I don't think he's the perfect fit there.
Is he your coach's kid too?
Yeah, I think so. I think there is a comfortability with him because he is a shooter, he is a scorer. You know how he's going to get on the floor. You know what his skill set is. And after having Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe, 2 guys who are not projects, but they're prospects, I think having something a little bit clearer makes some sense for them. But I don't understand how you get him on the floor and pair him up with those 2 in the long term.
Yeah.
That, to me, doesn't make nearly as much sense.
All right. Tijan Salon, according to Kristen Peak, who we had on yesterday, is firing up that smoke signal that, hey, Charlotte at 6, now very interested. And this is like the thing. You have the draft workout board that you have compiled on your Patreon, where it was at 34 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so the final number, check my phone.
And I think the point here is that every team with the instability of the pick ranges of some of the guys that you see in this draft, every team probably outside of Atlanta and Washington has brought through that many guys. Like, they're just bringing in everybody.
No, Portland, the final total of players who are declared for the draft, so this does not count the ones that withdrew or went back to school. Total draftable prospects was 44.
44 draftable prospects coming through Portland that you've been able to confirm, which there still could be.
No, that's
it. That you got all of them now.
That is, well, I don't have every single name. I have the number.
Okay, you got
I
the
know
number,
exactly
but
how many have come through.
44, and you're looking at
I'm missing
for
3 still.
4 potential draft spots. So they brought in 11 guys for each potential draft spot. And look, some of those guys, as we've mentioned before, are guys that they feel will be undrafted even, and could be guys that you just sign
or back
to the
or
G League
back.
remix
I mean, even then, at the back of the draft, this is the draftable guys. So these are guys that you know the Oso Iguodoras of the world. Even though he's slated between 55 and 58, he's still draftable.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different opportunities there, but yeah, they brought in 44 guys. That's the final tally number.
Golly,
it's a lot. It's a lot of folks to work out.
Now, if Charlotte comes through and snipes the Blazers again and gets the guy that they wanted back-to-back years, do we start a rivalry? Do we have to start a rivalry with Charlotte?
I don't know if you start a rivalry.
Is the Queen City in the Rose City then fighting?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can maybe mail a fart bomb kind of deal, but
that just got you on another watch list.
Come on, like there's not a single watch list that I'm not on.
Yeah, actually, that's been very true.
Somehow, I'm still on TSA pre-check. That guy, he's been on government airlines enough. He's been fine.
They gotta tighten that up.
Yeah, no.
They've got to tighten that up. You got pre-check. Can you get clear though?
Yeah, that's what. No, I do.
You got clear.
I had to get it for to travel to Hawaii.
Wait, you had to?
Yeah, during the pandemic.
Oh, during the pandemic.
Yeah. To get to Hawaii, you had to have it. As weird as that is. Well, I'm sorry. You didn't have to have it. It just when you got to Hawaii, you would have to spend like 5 hours in line, and I was not about that life. So, again, this is not me being against Dalton Connect. I like him as a player. One of the things that I noticed when I actually got to see him in person, he's bigger than I thought. He's 6'5", close to 6'6", decent wingspan. He's not like incredibly long, but he's not Nikola Topic where he's got a negative wingspan. He can score from every level. Like he's not the typical white guy shooter. Yeah, he can get his shot off. There's no doubt about that. But he's also a guy who can attack off the bounce a little bit. He can get into the mid-range. He can get to the rim. His handle is tight enough to where he can create his own shot. He's created for others. Like Tennessee went to him and said, "Run our offense." And so you take a look at that and you go, okay, he was very efficient. He was very productive. I've heard people say, well, he's not a good defender. Very, 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 very few people in the history of the NBA who are that kind of prolific offensively are also good defenders because you have to expend so much energy on the offensive side of the floor. So if you dial back his usage rate, I do think he's a functional defender. Now, I do worry about him, like who he defends, because he's kind of caught in between not fast enough for twos, maybe needs to get a little bit stronger to handle most threes that are like, again, you don't have Luka stoppers, you don't have Kawhi stoppers, that's why they are who they are. But you take a look at those kind of guys and you're like, can you see Dalton Connect starting and guarding that guy night in, night out?
And that goes back to our conversation that we had about Connect early on in the draft process when he was one of the first wave of guys to come through and work out for Portland was his usage rate at Tennessee was so high, ball was in his hand so often that you then have that conversation of, all right, does he have the ability to work more off ball and have that spot-up shooter ability? And by all accounts, all the evaluations say yes, he does.
I mean, here's your number.
He can operate without the ball in his hand and still be just as effective.
In the spot-up per Synergy Sports, he was at a 94th percentile in points per possession.
Okay.
In all of college basketball on volume. So, yeah, he can do it on the ball. He can do it off the ball. And I think he's the kind of guy who makes a ton of sense for this team in general. But
we're talking ourselves into it.
I'm not talking myself into it. I understand the motivations behind it. I think it's more of this is a not square peg round hole, but it's like octagon peg round hole. Like you can make it fit. You can stuff it in there. But it's not just it's gonna be a little tough.
Story of Danny's life. Yeah, you can stuff it in there.
I mean, it's if there's a will, there's a way situation, right? Every now and then the wood chipper, you need something a little push on the back end, right?
I love it.
All right, coming up next, we will be joined by Trailblazers beat reporter. I believe this is his official title.
Content creator.
Longtime coverer of the Portland Trailblazers, Mr. Casey Holdall. He will join us on the back end in hour number 3 here on Danny and Dusty, 1080 The Fan.
I'm Michael Jenkins, helping you beat the books.
Hour number 3 here on Danny and Dusty, live on location at 10 Barrel Brewing, down on Flanders and 14th in the Pearl, just down the street from our studio.
Yeah, it's 0.6 miles.
Yeah, it's a short trip.
I drove.
Don't tell it to anybody in the office.
I drove. Still.
Wait, did you go into the studio?
Yeah, I went down there. Got a little bit of the pre-draft workout stuff. Swag printed off these nifty fan or NBA pronunciation guides.
Oh, look at that! Look at the play-by-play guy being entirely prepared.
Yeah, well, I needed some clarity on Tajon Salam, and they have it.
Fair.
Lawn.
Lawn.
I don't want to screw the future Blazers name up.
I'm right there with you.
I just put it into existence.
There you go.
I want it to happen.
Put it out there. Put it out there even more.
Yeah.
It's the one thing of yours we want to be, put out there for everybody to see.
Yeah. I want Tajon Salam or Cody Williams.
There you go.
Or Donovan Clingan.
Okay.
Or now Dalton Connect.
There you go. I talked you into it?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Again, I'm attacking this draft in the same mindset through and through, which is I will not overreact and say, great pick, knocked it out of the park, going to be a home run. I'm probably not going to, no matter who it is, either get down on this pick and be like, that's a bum, that's a bad pick. Because who the hell knows in this draft right now? Right now, what we're learning from all of the draft pundits is that a lot of teams in the NBA have no idea who is going to project to be a star in this draft. So I don't know.
Nobody knows ever unless it's Victor Wembanyama. That's whenever
right.
Everybody looked at it and went, oh, that makes sense.
That's right.
Well, whether you're listening on 1080 AM, watching on youtube.com/1080 AM The Fan, or twitch.tv/1080 AM The Fan, we appreciate you. We love you. And now we are joined by the illustrious, the wonderful, the amazing Casey Holdall, Trailblazers. What is your official title now? Are you is it beat reporter, content creator, maestro of vibes?
Beat reporter, insider, digital producer, content producer. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. It's got something about reporter and content and inside somewhere in it. But besides that, I don't know if I could tell you any more specifically than that.
That's a hell of a gig right there.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a gig. So. They're like, he does something important. We know it.
After 17 years, it's really important to have that stuff all figured out. So
it's all about titles.
Well, we'll take your 17 years of experience here on the show. We appreciate you joining us, man. This is a draft you and I have talked about really since January, February. It's like, I don't know. And we've reached that magical place where a couple hours before the draft, everybody's talking themselves into their guy. When you look at this draft and you hear kind of what's out there and what's going on and how things are shaping up, what's your high-level takeaway?
That it's very much like we expected it to be, in that there's some talent out there in this draft, and there's some interesting prospects. Not a whole lot of guys who I think most teams figure are going to come in and change your franchise, especially not on day one, and probably not in year 3 or 4. But guys who can come in and be good players. Because of that, I think you kind of mentioned that it's kind of up in the air right now, which is. That makes perfect sense. If there was a lot of agreement about this class, I think you see a little more consensus, or there's at least a little more. I think people have a better sense of general areas that players are going to go. This year, it really feels like it's like Donovan Clingan could go 1, he could go 7, so things like that are pretty uncommon. So to be this far, obviously, a couple of hours before the draft, and still not really have a strong sense of who's going 1, 2, 3, I think is it tells you what you need to kind of know about this draft. But the other thing about that too, obviously, is that a lot of times teams are pretty reluctant to give up draft capital because they're really efficient uses of your dollars, and for the most part you want to bring in young players because particularly with the CBA as it is now, it can be prohibitive to have a lot of veteran players. But I think this year you're going to see a lot of teams will be like, hey, we'll trade this pick. Who cares? And so I think we could be, in for a busy night tonight, just because the lack of consensus about talent in this draft would lead me to believe that teams that feel like they're close or that feel like they want to try to get something done are probably going to do that on the trade market and maybe less in this draft, at least for the next couple of years.
One thing, actually, a couple things that I love about you, Casey, is your brutal honesty on halftime show performances and the in-between quarter and timeout interlude games that happen, activities. That is probably number one that I appreciate the most out of you. But number two is you are critical but fair of the Portland Trailblazers. You've been that through and through from your time working for the organization like you do now or prior to that at Blazers Edge. Now, I want to know from you, with what we saw from this team last season, what is the biggest hole that you feel needs to be filled by this team in the draft this year?
I kind of my standard answer to that, Dusty. Well, one, I appreciate the kind words. Is it just like it's a little hard for me to talk about like specific skills I feel like this team needs, particularly for like next season, because they just need talent. And so like for me, it feels like they're not nearly far enough along in the process of building this roster out to where you are even looking too much about like, well, so to answer your question, yeah, they need 3-point shooting. They still need perimeter defense. I mean, I think Tamani's addition last year really kind of makes you feel better about the perimeter defense, but still a ways to go in that regard. So you could use someone that can shoot from three. You could use someone who can defend, particularly on the perimeter. You could use someone that could be a secondary ball handler, secondary creator. That's something that I think we've seen, going back years and years and years now, that the Blazers just haven't really had that they could really use, particularly in today's NBA where, when you have young guards like the Blazers do and guys like Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe, other teams throw defenders at those guys knowing that they're probably going to make some mistakes. So having maybe one or two more guys to maybe kind of release from that ball handling responsibility, a guy like a stretch four or even a three. I think those are kind of the skills that if I felt this team was further along, I'd really be looking to plug right now. But for me, it's like it's still, particularly when you're talking about 7 and 14, like they just need talent. Like they need guys that can come in and play. And I feel like you're looking out 2 and 3 years right now. Yep. And so to even look at like, well, who are we going to bring in this year that's going to help us win games next year? It's like, for me, that's not really important at this point. Like, I mean, it's not a bad thing, but like that's further down the list for me in terms of the things that I would value out of picks in this draft. For me, it's more like, what is this guy going to be like in 3 years? Do we feel like he can grow into the kind of player that is going to be complementary to the guys we already have on this team? And so for me, that's really where the emphasis should be at in this draft.
We've gotten out of the infancy, and we're now in the toddler stage of a rebuild, where you still got holes, but you're starting to see it all take shape. And there's still a lot of places and a lot of opportunities to get better. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, because so like for example, if there was a great point guard in this draft that was available at 7, like you already got Scoot, you already feel like he's the future for your franchise.
Yeah.
I'm still taking that guy at 7 who's a point guard if I feel like he's going to be the best player at that spot, regardless of his positionality. Like for me, again, and I think you just figure that out in 2 and 3 years when contracts come due, and you got to kind of have a better sense of what your 8 players are. Right now, the Blazers they're not they don't need to worry about that right now. They need to worry about rote talent.
Casey, you and I have talked about this the changing of the guard, so to speak, as the type of prospect coming into the NBA is changing. The college prospect is obviously down this year with the 2025 draft looking like it might bounce back up. But with that, it also followed on the heels of Victor Wembanyama being number 1 pick overall last year. When you look at how this draft is shaping up, where you've got multiple international, including French players at the top, do you feel like this is just a one-off because of the way college is right now? Or is there going to be a pivot more to the international source of the game?
I mentioned this the other day when in regards to centers. And, no one really wants traditional centers for a while, but, so everyone in the league goes one direction, and it's all about stretch fives and guys who can shoot and stretch the floor. And then a few teams have some success with more traditional centers, and everyone kind of goes back that way. And I would say the draft is kind of the same idea where, there's times when I would even take it back to, Nikola Jokic, where like everyone's like, oh boy, we need to get a Jokic on our team. And so you start looking more internationally. And before that, though, it was all kind of about wings and guards, and there was more American players then. And I feel like there was kind of an idea that like, these international guys, they play a specific style of play. It doesn't work for us. It's not tough enough. Like, So I think a lot of that is kind of the ebb and flow that just is the NBA. It's a copycat league. But the other part, too, is that, Dan, like, I don't know that I could put my finger on it. Like, I couldn't, like, point to a thing and say this is what's happening. But it does feel to me between NIL really becoming a force and COVID and, those 2-3 years where, like, guys were staying in school or they weren't getting, or you were barely in school or you had practices but not games, like, that it feels to me like we're in maybe a 2 or 3 year stretch where, all those things coming together kind of at the same time really kind of hurt the guys that are in college now or that are coming out now. So, again, and I don't know that I could, like, point to something to say, like, well, that's proof of it. It's just a gut feeling I have that, like, to go from, it really feeling like every year there was a one-and-done guy who might change your franchise to, like, we're taking 23 and 24-year-olds in the draft right now, which are typically guys where, like, you're older than 21, and everyone's holding their nose to draft you. And now you got guys now who are 22, 23 who are going to go, lottery, and that's pretty uncommon. So I think that there's something going on there about these last 2 years and just how weird both society and the NCAA has been, to where I'm expecting that to kind of level out a little bit. But talk to me in 2 years and we can say if that theory was right.
In something that we heard from, whether it's coaches, players, pundits around the NBA, we heard about that shift post All-Star break and the way that games were being officiated, right? And the NBA was like, no, everything is standard. We haven't changed anything at all. But we all saw a more physical brand of basketball being played. Do you think that is something that is here to stay, and maybe teams are adapting to that as well through this draft process and the way they're roster building?
I mean, God, I would hope so, because I think you want guys who make their bones on the defensive end having an opportunity to be players. And, if you take away, 80% of what you're going to allow a guy to do as a defender, like, it's going to be hard to have anyone on your team who's not basically a more offensive-minded player. And everyone hates free throws, so, like, it slows the game down. It's boring. Like, it's not something that's good for the league as an entertainment product, let alone as, a competitive product. And so, my hope would be that after it just blew up in the first, 2 months of last season, that the changes that they made and the discussions that they had with the officials about, hey guys, let's maybe let some of the stuff go a little bit. I hope that sticks around because, again, I think it produces a more competitive game. It allows teams to play in varied ways other than just being a team that has to go out and score 120 points a night to win, which is kind of what it feels like we're going to in the NBA. And it also makes it more exciting. Like, I would much rather see, a guy have a chance at a block in transition than, some ticky-tack foul and then you're shooting 2 free throws on something that, conceivably could have been a defensive highlight. So, I hope they get to that direction. But the only problem there is that, all the stars in the NBA are guys who, again, are great offensive players. And when they start complaining that, they're getting fouled too often, their word typically has more weight than, your Herb Joneses of the world. So, sometimes it's about the amounts of politicking that gets done in the NBA. And, the Rudy Goberts of the world aren't exactly the guys who are first in line when it comes to getting Adam Silver on the phone to talk about the things they wish were or weren't happening in the games that they're playing.
Casey, what constitutes a successful first night here in the NBA draft? As we're a part of a now 2-night extravaganza in the NBA draft, round one and round two.
I think if you could, a good wing and a good young player who you feel like has a ways to grow, like, those are the two things for me where, like, they came out of the draft at 7 and 14 with both those things. Or even if, if for some reason they traded down and decided to address that more in the 20s, I would feel like that would be a pretty good first day for the Blazers. And really just getting anyone who can add some athleticism to the team, some length to the team, some shooting to the team. Like, for me, those are the things where, again, they're a ways from being super specific about the things that they need, but those are generally things that every team needs, and the Blazers are one of those teams. So, I would like to see if they're able to come out with, a 2, 3, 4 guy who can defend and who can shoot a bit. I think you feel pretty good about that. And then, with the other pick, if they're able to again, I would like to see them use at least one of these picks on a guy where it's like, look, we know this guy's not there yet. He's at least probably 2 seasons away from really being able to help us. But, we really feel like if we're able to do the things that we feel like we can do from a player development standpoint, and if this player is as serious about improving as we feel like he is, then this is a guy who, down the road, when we're really ready to start competing, this is a guy that's going to help us a whole lot more than some of the other guys that we could have taken in that spot. That, for me, is what I would say would be a really good first day for this team going into the draft.
I think we're both right there with you, ladies and gentlemen. Casey Holdall, the maestro of all things content for the Portland Trail Blazers. You can find him on social media at @CHold, and you can find his podcast, The Briefcase, that he does by himself. Look at that. And the podcast he does with the illustrious Brooke Olzendam, the Blazers Balcony, wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, that is a freight train that Casey has to stop when he does his podcast.
Miss Olzendam?
I mean, that's a runaway train, and congratulations, because you've wrangled her in.
I love doing it with Brooke. She's great about it. We have such a fun time. I do edit it down. Like, the stuff you guys are getting, sometimes it's parts of stories, sometimes it's entire stories. She trusts me enough as the producer of the show to make some of those hard decisions about maybe what to leave in and maybe what to just keep between ourselves. But also, too, shout out to you, Danny, for actually getting that right, considering that I screw up the names of my podcasts on 50% of the time, which is actually the worst thing with Brooke. Whenever I call our podcast on accident The Briefcase, it's I'm in for a few days of dirty looks and complaining.
Okay, thanks for taking some time, man. I'll see you a little bit later tonight.
Take it easy, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep. Once again, Casey Holdall. You can find him across social media at @CHold, and again across all the podcast platforms for the Briefcase and the Blazers Balcony that he does with again the wonderful Brooke Olzendam. And thanks, Casey, for taking some time. After this, we will dive into the NBA mock drafts as we are getting ready. We're not just a couple hours away from the NBA draft. There are some surprise names out there across a couple of services that have not been there at all until today. And we'll dive into those next here on Danny Dutsey, 1080 The Fan.
Hello, sports fans.
again, thanks to our guests today, Corey Telebov, No Ceilings, and Casey Holdall, the Portland Trailblazers ahead of the NBA draft. We are live on location at 10 Barrel Brewing downtown, in the Pearl in Portland. People get mad when you call it the wrong neighborhood. It's not downtown. Yeah.
14th and Flanders, come party.
Come on down. The food's flowing, the booze is flowing, the food's getting cooked, and it's a grand old time down here. With that, Edmund, NBA mocks.
Wait, hold on. Check in 1 to 10. Where are you at?
Oh,
Excitement level.
We're still getting there. It's we have to be closer, and I have to have a better understanding of where things are at. Then I get more excited.
Because you have to know everything right now?
I need to have a better understanding of how to go about things.
Being the uncertainty of this draft, doesn't that make it more exciting for you? Because to me, it makes it more exciting. This draft is far more exciting to me than last year's was. Even though the Blazers were third, everybody was so high on Miller and Scoot, and it was like, we don't know where they're going to go. To me, this one is so wide open.
Oh, yeah.
And we have everything from a center to a sharpshooting 3 to a stretch 4 to a point guard now being thrown into the mock drafts. The Blazers could literally go anywhere. We heard Casey Holdall right there say, hey, if there's a point guard that you love, and go get him, because there's so many holes on this roster that go and fill them.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what a lot of teams are doing right now as we dive into some of the mocks here. There hasn't been a change at the ESPN. There has been a change at Yahoo, again, with Kristen Peek, who joined us on Monday. She now has the Portland Trailblazers taking Donovan Clingan at number 7, which feels less and less likely at this point in time, as he looks like he's probably going to be gone before pick 5, whether via a team that trades up or the Pistons trade out of their position, or they get a little weird and they take Clingan themselves. But at pick number 14, somebody who did come out and work out for the Portland Trailblazers, Duke guard Jared McCain.
Dookie!
I'm sure that'll make our boss thrilled to see a Dookie potentially linked to Portland. Yeah. But Jared McCain, 6'2", 195-pound guard. He's in much the same way that Reed Shepherd's not really a point guard, Jared McCain's not really a point guard. He hasn't been allowed to, nor has he showcased real playmaking ability. But what he can do is shoot the cover off the ball.
Yep.
There's no doubt about that. And if you're the Portland Trailblazers and you're like, we're potentially moving Malcolm Brogdon, we're potentially moving Anthony Simons, and we need more shooting balance within our roster, and we have him rated as the highest shooter remaining, well, let's go take a look at that.
And especially because Scoot is a downhill, not a shooter, going to be getting to the rack. Have a counter punch, right? Have shooters on the floor to surround him, or when he's not on the floor, to be able to give a different look. And look, this team needs shooters in the worst way possible. So at 14, I've just resigned myself to say that's a crapshoot pick anyways. And so we don't know what will happen there. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I just don't understand is ESPN's mock has Jacoby Walters at 14. Mm-hmm. The Baylor swingman, shooting guard, small forward. I just don't understand that pick at all.
Yeah, no,
because he's not on your manifest of Blazer workouts.
No, and I've heard that his camp has kind of steered him much the same way Steph Castle's camp has steered him, and that Walter's camp was steering him away from Portland.
And there were rumblings that he came in, did a closed-door secret workout for Portland. That was shot down behind the scenes.
Yep, and so it's interesting to hear that name come up there. Is that trying to maybe bolster Walter's position a little bit? Do they genuinely believe that Jacoby Walter could be that guy? I like Walter as a prospect generally, but I don't think that 14 is necessarily where I would go with him. He's a 3-and-D guy who he doesn't have kind of a crazy athletic burst, even if he's got some size, even if he's got some ability. His shooting was down a little bit, but I like his competitiveness. I like his mentality. He's a guy that is working out with Phil Beckner, who's trained Damian Lillard, and the guys that tend to work out with Phil tend to figure out the whole shooting thing.
They
Anthony
do.
Simons,
and they
Damian
do it
Lillard,
really
Mikal
good.
Bridges. When I hear those kind of opportunities are out there for guys, I'm like, I start to believe in the shooting. Now, is he more 1-2 than he is 2-3? I think that's the question you have, and I think even if the defense is there, the shot creation probably isn't. And the opportunity for Portland there is like, okay, now how do you get him on the floor?
Yeah.
And I think that's the same question the people around him probably have is, what's the clear path for him on the floor? Because as of right now, Malcolm Brogdon and Anthony Simons are still on the roster. Now, there's a likelihood that one of them, or even both of them, could get moved. But as of right now, and throughout the process, you don't know that. So you're trying, much like Alex Sarr was steering to Washington because it's a very clear path and there's nothing really in his way, whether he's playing the 4 or the 5. I think you're seeing a change in players coming into the NBA where it's less about where they get picked and more about where they land and the opportunity that's there, because it's more important to get to the second contract than it is to be picked higher.
Not the position in the draft, but the location of the team and where you fit into their scheme, style, and their hierarchy, which, by the way, is really smart. It's the way that athletes should be approaching the draft because, look, it's one of the very few industries where you don't get to pick where you go, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you have professional sports and like the military where it's the two places where they're like,
you go where we tell you.
We are going to tell you where to go. Now, you get mountains of money to go and do it, but
not
if
in the
you
military.
can, not in the military. In the NBA, you do.
Clarify that one. If they did, I got screwed.
But if you can manipulate the direction of where you go, that's the best case scenario for you. And I think that fortunately we have a lot of athletes and agents that have realized that. Unfortunately, if you're a fan of a disorganized franchise, that means they're not going to you, and they want to stay away from you. And that's where your management, your culture of your organization means a whole hell of a lot.
Which we've heard with regard to the Charlotte Hornets. There's been a couple players that have been, I'm going to go ahead and stay clear there because of what's been going on there in the past. The last one we'll check in before we get the break. The Ringer, Kevin O'Connor, has Nikola Topic at 14 going to the Portland Trailblazers. Nikola Topic did, in fact, come to Portland.
I would like
for a private interview. He did not do any workouts because he's coming back off, obviously, a partially torn ACL.
No, he's going to have ACL surgery. In his measurement, like, by the way, his pre-draft process was a cluster because
his agent bungled it.
His measurements came in far below where he was at, and
expectations.
Reportedly where they had leaked he was as far as his wingspan and his height. Then you have the knee sprains that we had heard about.
Multiple. That turned into
now
an ACL tear.
It's an ACL tear.
Yeah.
Then they're like partially torn. Gonna still need surgery like a normal ACL tear.
It's a lot like Kristaps Porzingis' ligament and Joel Embiid's flap in his knee.
Yeah.
So, but I have heard that Topic is there is potential for Portland to look at him there. However, I'm not certain that he falls, as I've heard Utah is a team that has looked at Topic plenty. Think about this real
Utah,
quick.
you've heard San Antonio as well with that 8th pick has been linked to him.
So, for those that don't know, Topic measured in just under 6'6" barefoot. So he's a 6'7" guard. Like that's a real thing in shoes. He plays at 6'7".
They don't play barefoot?
No. Problem is he's got a 6'6" wingspan. So he's a negative wingspan guy. His shooting has been suspect at best, but his feel, his playmaking, and his creation, those things are very real, and those are the things that you're counting on, and you're hoping that you can figure out the shooting.
And when you have feel, when you have a high basketball IQ, oftentimes those guys are the ones that we hear the term all the time, plays bigger.
Yeah.
Right? That leads you to play bigger. I mean, Josh Hart is a great example. High basketball IQ guy, has great feel, and he's a 6'4" guy who can rebound in the woods with the 7-footers.
It's a good place to be. It's a good place to be a 6'7" guard.
Yep.
It's better to be 6'7" than to be 6'2", that's for sure.
Yeah, it is.
Much like you can't coach speed, you also can't coach height.
You can't do it.
And the bigger you are, the more likely you are to succeed. To an extent, you can be, little too big.
Yes,
it happens.
Like the 7.
You can ask
where'd
around.
that 7'9" kid commit to?
Florida.
Yeah,
he's an IMG Academy. He started off there. He was 7'4". He grew. I'm sorry, 7'2" or 7'4", and then he was 7'4", and now he's 7'9".
Goodness gracious!
Yeah, watching him, it's like watching Slender Man. It's mildly terrifying.
Crazy.
Yeah, 7'9" really big. All right, coming up next on the back half of the hour, we will reset with any news, notes, intel as we get ready to get into the NBA draft coming around Danny Dusty. But first, here's the Big Kahuna with the Sports Center update.
That's that Hawaiian burger joint.
Now, Now, from the Fan Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
This update brought to you by Crunch Fitness. Memberships as low as $9.99 per month. Find your Crunch time in Portland and Vancouver and online at crunch.com. First on The Fan, the NBA draft is finally here. The Trailblazers with picks 7 and 14 in the first round and 34 and 40 in the second round. No indication yet of their plans, as there is still much uncertainty in the picks that precede them. Danny and Dusty and Primetime with Isaac and Souk live from 10 Barrel Pub in the Pearl all the way until 7 o'clock. ESPN radio coverage of the draft starts at 4 o'clock on 910 ESPN Portland. Shams Charania of The Athletic reporting the Heat and center Bam Adebayo intend to sign a 3-year, $166 million max extension through the 2028-29 season. Over in Major League Baseball, the Mariners looking to avoid the sweep in Tampa. They took a 5-1 lead over the Rays into the bottom of the ninth, only to load the bases with nobody out. Tampa, though, only got 1 run out of it. 5-2 is your final. Big dumper Cal Raleigh with a 3-run home run. George Kirby gets the win. 6 innings, 1 run, no walks, and 7 strikeouts. Elsewhere in the AL West, the Astros stomped the Rockies 7-1. The Brewers beat the Rangers 6-5 in 10 innings. Seattle holds a 4.5-game lead over Houston in the division. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust at the Fan Sports Desk. Listen live or on demand on the Odyssey app, the Fan's desktop player, or tell your smart speaker to play 1080 The Fan.
Jump back to earlier parts of your favorite fan shows on the Odyssey app. The only way to rewind Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan.
There's a certain point in the tweet that I'm about to read where you're going to go, I wonder who that is. And unless you've seen it, there's a 0% chance you'll know who it is until I get to the second paragraph. NBA draft night is the best. Everyone talking about the drama and the storylines. Some are right and some are just wrong.
Oh, did you tweet that?
No.
All right.
Phoenix Suns owner Matt Ishbia followed it up in the second paragraph saying, my turn. Phoenix loves Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant loves Phoenix. And we're competing for a championship this year because we have the team to do it. Gotta love draft night. Go Suns.
He gone. They're that just tells me they're trading Kevin Durant.
Doth do protest too much.
Yeah.
I I have zero idea why Matt Ishbia is doing this. This is not doing anything to tamper down any of the noise following last night when the Brooklyn Nets and Houston Rockets and New York Knicks consummated a trade where the Houston Rockets ended up with basically the Phoenix Suns' future. Yes, and that's basically what the Houston Rockets are doing right now and saying, if you want your future back, here's what it's going to cost you. And it's no secret that Ime Udoka wants a more veteran team, wants a team that's ready to compete. But I think you can make the argument pretty clearly that the Houston Rockets, even with Kevin Durant, aren't just a Kevin Durant away from really competing. So where exactly do they end up in all of this?
Then there's also the rumblings of there is a pathway where Houston does part way, and this was before last night, that Sengun would be gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're big. What is Phoenix in the midst of right now? Salary cap hell.
Mm-hmm.
And they will be, as long as Bradley Beal is on that team and under contract. They are in a position where they're going to be a second apron team. Does anybody have any faith or hope that Beal will resurrect his career again?
No.
Because injuries have piled up and taken a toll on Bradley Beal. It is clear as day. He does not look nearly like the same player. Washington was gladly giving him away for the haul that they got. And Phoenix, although they may... And look, as long as you have, Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, sure, Matt Ishbia is right. You do have that chance and that opportunity. But with Bradley Beal as the anchor to your salary cap, dragging you down, the planets have to align perfectly. And I wouldn't be surprised one bit if they went down the road of, all right, we are going to do a soft pivot and a soft rebuild, as it would be, by going and getting a bunch of picks for Kevin Durant, especially our own picks back, because we need young, cheap talent, and we get better that way and try to just start forward. Because, look, Ishbia has been this since he got there. He's been ultra aggressive in everything that he's done.
Probably too aggressive.
Well, obviously the Bradley Beal trade 100% kind of outlines that.
Yeah, and I think that's the question now is there's been a lot of noise and chatter around a potential big move today, and whether or not it actually comes together. That's when we had Corey Teleball on, he alluded to essentially the same thing, where he said, there's a lot of talk this time of year, and deals, you hear a lot of things, but how many of them actually get consummated? It sounds like that there may be big moves.
Yeah.
Now, will somebody say yes and get the handshake and make the deal like Brooklyn and New York did last night? Mm-hmm. But we'll see exactly how that shakes out. But right now, the Houston Rockets are kind of in the pole position as a team that has the opportunity to do a lot. And another reason that you watch them here, the Rockets have picked number 3. They could trade that as part of a package for a star. Mm-hmm. They could trade back with the Memphis Grizzlies to pick number 9 and pick up more capital. I've heard Marcus Smart, I've mentioned before. They could also go door number 3 and draft Donovan Clingan. And then all of a sudden, now you're looking at a guy like Alperen Şengün, who the Rockets have basically had to decide now going forward on who they're going to give their money to. Does it go to Jalen Green? Does it go to Alperen Şengün? Jalen Green started out last season pretty poorly. He came on late, which you kind of have to always be a little wary of, the late season pushes when basketball gets a little less organized against some lesser teams, certainly. But also the team played better without Alperen Şengün at that center spot. As good as Şengün is as a kind of a baby Jokic post facilitator, he does limit what you can and can't do because he's a big, heavy-footed center who needs the ball in his hands and kind of works as that playmaking hub. So when you've got a team that's made up as incredibly athletic forwards as this team has, you have to wonder, does Şengün make a ton of sense around that team? Or do they say, hey, we can roll with Şengün because we're so athletic everywhere else? And I think that's the opportunity that they're trying to evaluate right now is what to do with one of those guys going forward.
Well, and here's a big one, too, that we need to discuss when it pertains to Kevin Durant potentially being traded out of Phoenix, is that whichever team brings him in will have to match $51.2 million of his salary.
A lot of money.
That's a lot of, and where does that come from in Houston, right? Because right now it's Fred VanVleet is at $42 million, and then the drop-off from Fred VanVleet down to Dylan Brooks at 22. I mean, that is a chasm. And you were talking about Şengün, who you're looking at him. He only makes $5 million. So you got to come up with $46 million more to match Kevin Durant. And look, the matching of the NBA first-round draft picks, the dollar value, it doesn't make sense because Bogdanovich in 4 unprotected first-round picks doesn't seem to add up to Mikal Bridges.
So there's been some points of contention because that deal is only reported.
You
it's
feel
not
like there's
official
got to
yet.
be a player in there.
Well, there's likely going to be one or more additional tweaks to that deal because this is going to get super nerdy here. There is already a actual point of contention and clarification. So when you have a new CBA, you reach out to the league and go, hey, we have a clarification on this line in the CBA. In this, much like a court case, it sets precedent. And so, hey, did you mean it to mean X, Y, and Z or A, B, and C? And so that is being clarified with as far as the actual legal writing of the CBA, as dumb and terrible as that is. But there's also probably going to be a very, 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 very minimal tweak to the reported deal.
Because if you were to look at if it goes dollar for dollar in these, you're looking at $19 million for Bogdanovich. Bridges is at $23 million. So you're looking at essentially each pick being worth $1 million in that one. And that then kind of changes the way that we're looking at a Kevin Durant trade, because if Houston is saying, hey, we got your picks, well, what other players are going to be having to be thrown in there? Because that's a lot of players that are going to have to go.
Well, they also do have the salary cap slots from Fred VanVleet. They have the salary cap spots from Dylan Brooks. Like they can
Well, I
get
know,
to
but
it.
are you going to be dealing VanVleet to Phoenix, and does that make sense on Phoenix's end?
I mean, they do need another guard.
$42 million.
I'm just saying. The deal is only for one more year.
They need Bradley Beal to medically retire is what they need.
That's what they need, and then to possibly unmedically retire and cause a whole conniption.
Yeah.
Not like we've seen that story before.
Brandon Roy?
Definitely did not do that with the Minnesota Timberwolves after agreeing to a insurance settlement and causing a whole bunch of problems.
Well, at least we had the amnesty clause.
Right? We do. They really should have put one of those in
I think
this.
every CBA
Should have
an amnesty where you can just be like, nope, we call takebacks.
I like it.
Getting money.
All right, as we get ready to put a little bow on today's show, we will come back and revisit where things stand as we are now a little more than an hour away from getting under the festivities, or 2 hours away.
2 hours.
Away from the festivities of this year's NBA draft on Danny and Dusty, 1080 The Fan.
It's the Vancouver Ford
John, Danny, Dusty, live at 10 Barrel Brewing on 14th and Flanders in the Pearl. Come on down, enjoy us. Well, not us. We're packing it up here. But Isaac and Suk with Primetime are getting ready to hop on, following us here live on location and carrying you all the way through, well, most of the NBA draft. It'll probably still be going for some ungodly reason.
Just making it far too long for everybody.
They want to put in more time between the picks and making it 2 days. It's just like, come on, guys, what are we doing here?
All right, let me get this from you.
Okay.
Best case, worst case scenarios for the Blazers in the draft tonight.
Best case for me, at pick 7, they get one of Williams or Salon. Those are the two guys that I think that I have locked in on the most. I think there's a reasonable chance that Klingon is there, that they go that path, which I wouldn't be against. In that group, Connect is probably the one that I have least favorably. It's not that I don't like him. I just don't. I like him as a player. I don't necessarily like the fit. That's, I think, my issue there. If I was going in a pecking order, it would probably be Williams, Klingon, Salon, Connect in that order in 7, and at 14, I'm with Casey. I think you just take the swing on the player there. That's really what I want to see come out of this. Best case scenario. On top of that, they find a way to move one of their contracts.
That's what I think. Best case for me is Salon and De Silva.
Yeah.
I like
that'd be a great
the
draft,
swing.
in my opinion.
I like the swing on De Silva, and then moving Brogdon or Grant or Williams or hell, Ant, I don't know, in collecting more assets moving forward, because that's where this team is at right now, and that's how you have the most flexibility moving forward.
Yeah, and worst case scenario is they go in, they make their picks, and that's it. And then I don't think any of the picks are looked at as the higher upside guys. Yeah. And I think that's the kind of thing that you're looking at right now.
Zach Edey at 7 is my worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's definitely up there.
That's it for me.
Yeah, that feels like, as Kristen Peak said, that might be a fireable offense, I believe is her exact wording.
I just can't believe we see that. We see that time and time again coming up is Edey at 7. The rumblings.
Well, that's speaking the rumbling that you heard was from Kevin O'Connor. That's from the Ringer.
So
that's
weird.
Like I said, you can find whatever you want, whatever opinion you want. If you look hard enough, you can find it. That's a real thing in the NBA.
Something for anybody on the internet.
And look, not even just that. Like in the NBA, you can find a scout that's like, you know what, Victor Wembanyama, it's all hype. Like those people existed. Remember we talked about this before the draft last year. That those people are like, he's too skinny, he's going to get hurt. The skill level is actually not that high. It's all hype. Like. Whatever you want, you can find that out there.
Those people are morons.
Yes. What we know right now with the consensus mock drafts is there is no consensus. Donovan Klingon is the guy that is most often mocked to Portland, but as I said here in text during breaks, it sounds very, very, very likely that a team is going to move up to 3 or 5.
Memphis?
There's been more noise about if a team does not trade with Houston that they will trade with Detroit at number 5. The Rob Dillingham smoke is very much there, but it is Detroit not at 5, but in a possible trade back scenario with Memphis. So taking Rob Dillingham at pick number 9, but that would mean the Memphis Grizzlies are moving up number 5 to take Donovan Klingon. So as much as Klingon has been mocked to Portland, I'm feeling less and less likely that is the case with how much noise there is out there, considering where things are at right now. Now, again, we're just a little bit more than 2 hours away from the NBA draft getting underway, which is more than likely like 2.5 hours because it's America and we can never start anything on time. When we say 5 o'clock, it means 5:30.
That's right.
So there's still a little bit of time to make those moves, those potential draft picks, but it's as of right now, it's we opened the show saying that the potential for outcomes was about as clear as mud, and 3 hours later, it is clear as mud. My phone has not stopped, and there has not been any further real clarification other than I strongly believe X or Executive Y is telling me this. There's not a no. It's going to be this. And this time last year, we got actually, it's going to be Powell number 1.
Or 2 years ago, yeah.
Oh, sorry, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We still don't have that this year.
Yeah.
We still don't have that, and we are a little more than 2 hours away.
Well, I mean, you have some people saying it. We have some people that are saying it's going to be Reza Shea at 1, according to ESPN now.
Did they just put it out?
About a half hour ago.
Okay.
They put it out there. Reza Shea to Atlanta at 1 is the most likely scenario that we hear. So he's expected to be the number 1 overall pick. And look, back-to-back years, a Frenchie goes number 1 overall. So that's from Givney at ESPN.
I'll close on this. I just got a text message that says that somebody that is very plugged in told me that they think it's going to be Cody Williams at 7. So
I hope he's there.
I do too.
Because that
sounds
is the
like
one too. Like Charlotte's starting to fall in love with him. Nobody knows what the hell's going to happen with Detroit at 5.
And there is. If you get information about the Spurs, it didn't come from the Spurs. That's not how they operate. No. Remember last year during the Damian Lillard saga, you had Heat fans and Heat media members saying the Heat don't leak. It's the Titanic, the Heat leak. The San Antonio Spurs.
Speaking of the Heat leaking, Bam Adebayo in that contract extension, 3-year, 166, and all of a sudden Jimmy Butler's going probably seething because he wants his early extension.
We're going
to see Jimmy Butler traded tonight?
There's been some discussion that they made that announcement and did it now to soften the blow of potentially a Jimmy Butler trade. Now, I don't know how much I believe that. Despite what people may try to tell you, the folks who work in the league have tighter tinfoil hats than most people because you're always looking for that angle, right?
Yeah.
So that's certainly been out there. I'm really interested to see because people that I trust at the highest of levels have told me that the level of activity and the level of discussions for big deals are there, which when you have big deals, that gets the snowball rolling downhill. Yeah. That's when all of a sudden everybody – and last night this happened. I was taking phone calls and text messages back and forth. The Bridges deal broke, and it went dead silent. Because everybody was chasing, okay, if this, then this, then this, because it just changed everything. So if we get a deal here in the next hour or so, it's going to be very interesting to see kind of who starts chasing their tail and down what rabbit hole. Like I said, it's like this draft is trying to chase a coked out rabbit.
Well, we're going to try to chase it down here in about 2 hours from now is when this whole thing, 2 hours and 5 minutes from now, the NBA draft gets started. If you are in the area, come on down to 10 Barrel in the Pearl, 14th and Flanders. It's the fans' NBA draft party. We're going to be here till 7 o'clock.